Call to order the Subcommittee on Communications and Technology, and certainly welcome our panelists, witnesses who are here today. We very much appreciate your willingness to come and share your thoughts on the future of video. This is one of a series of hearings that we've organized, the first being future of audio and now future of video, and eventually we'll do future of data as well. And later in July, we'll have all 5 FCC commissioners here. Now it's up to full functioning status, and so we look forward to that hearing as well as we look at these various rules and laws that have been on the books for a long time, and in an era when the marketplace continues to evolve and change dynamically and in a very rapid way. The FCC regulates traditional video providers based on a bygone era. When Congress passed the 1992 Cable Act, for example, cable operators controlled 98% of the pay TV distribution market and were affiliated with 53% of the national program networks. That law was meant to spur competition. It worked. Nationwide, satellite TV providers, Dish and DirecTV, now control approximately 1/3 of the market and are the second and third largest providers. Only 15% of national program networks are vertically integrated with a cable operator. Broadcast stations are going mobile, and wireless carriers are streaming video. Programmers and pay TV providers are filling smartphone and tablet screens with their content and services as fast as viewers are clamoring for them. At the same time, new entities are flocking to the market. Within the last 10 years, YouTube, iTunes, Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, Roku, SkyAngel, and many others have leapt to provide video over the Internet. Currently, the Communications Act does not apply to these players. We therefore have some decisions to make. One option is to recognize the competitive landscape and start deregulating cable, satellite, and broadcast companies. The other is to expand the Communications Act to apply to the new technologies and services. I, for one, do not believe we should be expanding video regulation. Internet-distributed video is growing at a remarkable pace in the absence of regulation. Video represented more than half of global Internet traffic by 2011, according to Cisco. Video delivered over the Internet, specifically to televisions, doubled in 2011 and will increase 6-fold by 2016, representing 11% of consumer Internet video traffic. By 2016, 1.2 million minutes of video will cross the network every second. And it would take more than 6 million years to watch the amount of video that will cross global IP networks each month. Existing cable, satellite, and broadcast providers and programmers are experimenting with Internet distribution. Internet-only providers and programmers are also springing up. Regulation is not only unnecessary in such a vibrant environment, it can actually harm this nascent competition. The creative chaos in the marketplace, frankly, is healthy as parties fight to out-innovate each other and win viewers. A vibrant marketplace benefits consumers, and it generates new jobs. The last thing we want is to shackle everyone's entrepreneurial spirit with one-size-fits-all rules designed for another day in time. And if we're not going to apply the old regime to the new participants, we must recognize the inequity of continuing to apply it to the traditional players. The rules were premised on a lack of video competition that just isn't the reality anymore. To impose the regulations in a disparate fashion is neither technologically nor competitively neutral. It's not only unfair to the parties, it does viewers a disservice. Cable operators, satellite providers, and broadcasters should be allowed just as much flexibility to respond to competition from the Internet players as we would like the Internet players to have to respond to competition from the traditional players. This is how we'll spur innovation. With that, I yield the balance of my time to the Vice Chair of the Committee, Mr. Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot has changed in the video marketplace over the last 20 years. Content, distribution, and consumers' preferences have all evolved. We are a society that wants what we want, when we want it, wherever we want it, and because of this, communication sector has spent billions over the last 2 decades in order to meet that consumer appetite. As we engage in discussions about the current state of video marketplace and get bogged down in the granular details of disputes and issues, it is imperative that we always keep one thing in mind. The consumer is and will always remain the most important component of the discussion. It's appropriate to ask questions about whether the regulations of decades past are, in fact, still appropriate today. Do they inhibit competition or spur it? Do they create regulatory parity or uneven playing fields? And most importantly, do we still work to the betterment of the consumer? Or are consumers now caught in the middle? Consumers need to benefit from the great expansion in technologies and mobility of technology. With that, I would like to submit for the record the CEA letter written to
Without
our
objection.
committee on regards to the technology. I thank my friend from Oregon and yield back.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. Chair now recognizes the ranking member of the subcommittee, my friend from California, Ms. Eshoo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to the witnesses, and thank you for being here. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having this hearing. I think it's a very important one, and certainly when you look at the line outside, there's a great deal of interest. Over the past 20 years, the video market has undergone remarkable transformation. Today, consumers have access to more programming choices than ever before and have increasing control over where and when they watch these programs thanks to the DVR, to the internet, and to mobile devices like smartphones and tablets. While we've advanced in so many ways, there are also several key barriers that I'm concerned have or could in the future curtail the exciting innovation that defines the next generation of video. First, when Congress passed the 1996 Act, we required the FCC to establish rules to increase consumer choice and competition in the set-box market. While we may never have imagined the benefits of internet-connected devices like Roku and Boxee, consumers continue to have limited options when it comes to finding devices with features equivalent to the cable company-issued set-top box. Second, consumers should not be held hostage when retransmission disputes break down. Since 2010, 10 different multi-channel video programming distributors have experienced at least 34 blackouts in at least 76 media markets. Among the most high-profile disputes, which I think all of us recall, was a blackout that prevented millions of households from watching the first two games of the 2010 World Series. And I'd like to ask for unanimous consent to submit for the record, Mr. Chairman, the broadcaster retrans blackouts 2010-2012.
Without objection.
Thank you. Third, I'm concerned about the potential impact of data caps on the growth of the streaming video market. Just 2 weeks ago, it was widely reported that the Department of Justice had begun looking into whether data caps unfairly limit online video competition. While we don't know the extent of this inquiry, it falls on this subcommittee to thoroughly examine the issue and ensure future innovation is not curtailed. Finally, there are joint agreements involving Verizon and several of the nation's largest cable companies that are an example of the changing video landscape. Last week, I once again called on for the subcommittee to have a hearing to review the proposed transaction, and I hope Chairman Upton and Walden will agree to this request. I haven't taken a position on these proposed changes or what's in the works, but I do think that we would all benefit from an examination of them. I want to welcome again all of our witnesses that are here this morning, and most especially to the two that have traveled probably the farthest, that are Silicon Valley constituent companies, Netflix of Los Gatos and Roku of Saratoga. So thank you again, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back the balance of time. Chair recognizes the full committee chairman, the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Upton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The beauty of the free market is that it harnesses the laws of economics to spur competition, especially in the communications sector. If you're not using technology to offer new services or cheaper prices, you're not going to last very long. Unlike the laws of Congress, the laws of economics are exceedingly nimble. If new technologies or new competitors arise, the marketplace begins to adjust almost immediately. Legislators and regulators, by contrast, operate at a glacial pace relative to the speed of technology. Even the FCC's data on video competition is 6 years out of date, let alone the regulations. The laws of economics also encourage diversity. Companies that can't provide the same services or content at cheaper prices strive to offer different services or content. That's what we call innovation. Many regs, by contrast, drive everything to the lowest common denominator. If everyone is entitled to whatever content is popular at the moment, why would anyone risk investing in something brand new? And if everyone is entitled to the fruits of your labor, whether that's your distribution platform or your content, you're less likely to invest as much. Indeed, differentiation is often a leading driver of competition. So, for example, many attribute the exclusive availability of the football Sunday ticket on DirecTV as a prime source of that satellite TV provider's growth. This, in turn, forces other players to invest in different content, develop better services, or lower prices. Regulations in that space will only decrease economic activity. If particular behavior were economic, there would be no need to compel it. While such mandates might be warranted in a world of only 3 broadcast networks, or where cable operators serve close to 100% of the pay TV market, that's not the world that we live in anymore. Cable's share of the subscription TV market has dropped from 98% at the time that Congress passed the '92 Cable Act to 68% in 2006, and is probably about 55% today. That means almost 1 out of every other home gets their programming from some other source, like a satellite operator or a phone company. The number of national program networks grew from 106 in 1994 to 565 in 2006, and the percentage of networks affiliated with a cable operator has shrunk from 53% when the Cable Act passed to 15% in '06. So if we want to spur investment, innovation, and jobs, the time may have come to pull back on the laws that Congress and the laws of economics do more of the work. Viewers across the country, not to mention our economy, would be better for it. I yield to Mr. Stern.
We have 3 on our side, I think, would like time. Mr. Stearns.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think, as Ms. Eshoo pointed out, a little nudge from this committee with legislation will create a judge of billions of dollars out there in the audience. I think, as you pointed out, the 1992 cable, Mr. Chairman, when it was passed, everything's changed dramatically since then. I hope today, as a first step towards all of us coming together with a process to modernize the 1992 Cable Act, as you pointed out, Cisco recently released a study revealing that 2016, over 2/3, 68% of the U.S. mobile data traffic will be video. The current rollout of mobile DTV by broadcasters and Dish push to enter into the wireless market are important examples of industry that are simply responding to consumer demand. As many of our witnesses will testify today, consumers have access to more content, higher quality programming, and a greater variety of devices than perhaps ever before. So I look forward to learning what is working and what the government can do to advance the future of video even further.
Now recognize gentlelady from Tennessee, Ms. Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to all of our witnesses today. I think that from the opening statements you can see we can agree that the constant in the video arena is change and innovation. And I was thinking through my nearly 20 years of work in both the private and public sector on this issue, and going from big box TVs to home theaters, and then watching the analog to digital. Now you can carry pretty much whatever you want on the iPad and plug it into a dumb screen, and there you go. Going forward, I hope we're going to focus on end use. I think consumers are the best at deciding what they want in content and also in their delivery mechanisms. And so I look forward to the discussion we're going to have about how we insert free market principles into the good work and innovation you do. Yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Recognize the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Waxman, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Walden, for holding this hearing to examine the future of video, and I want to thank you for working with us to assemble an interesting and diverse panel of witnesses. Digital technology and broadband internet access are dramatically altering how video content is produced, delivered, and consumed, promising more choices and greater value for consumers and new avenues for the creative community to distribute its work. Our challenge is to ensure a diversity of voices, robust competition, and greater access to these new platforms. The panel of witnesses before us illustrates the many ways Americans can access video programming today: free over-the-air broadcasting, pay television service from cable, satellite, even traditional telephone companies, or video delivered through a broadband connection. Video programming is no longer the exclusive province of the television set. Consumers can now use tablets and smartphones to watch their preferred content. Innovative products and services are increasingly putting viewers in control of what, when, where, and how they watch video. Even as we marvel at the incredible advances in technology, we must be mindful that policy choices we make today will impact the video landscape we see tomorrow. We should examine whether the legal framework created 20 years ago still works for a video market filled with choices that did not even exist 2 or 3 years ago. And we should remember that old challenges can persist in the face of new opportunities. Competitors need a fair shot at gaining access to content, and independent creators need rules that prevent discrimination against carriage of their programming. 2 decades ago, the actions of this committee and others in Congress helped once nascent industries like cable and satellite to offer new choices to consumers. Today, we must continue to ensure innovation in the video marketplace can continue to flourish. As consumers increasingly watch video through broadband, an open internet that is accessible to all becomes even more important. We need to carefully examine whether practices like broadband data usage caps are restricting consumer choice or being employed in an anti-competitive manner. Also deserving of our scrutiny is whether major providers of video and broadband services will continue to have the incentives to compete in light of joint agreements and consolidation in the marketplace. And I join our ranking member, Eshoo, in requesting hearings to examine the proposed transactions between Verizon and 4 of the nation's largest cable companies, including an examination of the joint marketing agreements that would allow the companies to cross-market each other's services. I hope the committee will convene a hearing so that members can consider the impact of these deals not only on the video and broadband markets, but also on wireless competition. I appreciate all the witnesses for participating in today's hearing. I look forward to your testimony, and I want to yield time to Mr. DeGette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Waxman. I just want to add my greetings to my constituent, Charlie Ergen from Dish Network, who came almost as far as Ms. Eshoo's constituents to be with us today. Thank you for coming. I yield back.
I join you in welcoming Mr. Ergen and all of our panelists, whether they came all the way from California or down the street from K Street. Welcome to you all. Yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back balance of his time. We'll get on with our witnesses now, and again, thank you all for being here. We're going to start with Mr. Robert Johnson, the CEO of Sky Angel US LLC. Mr. Johnson, thank you for being here. We appreciate reading through your testimony and look forward to your comments. Just for all the panelists, if you haven't used these microphones, you really need to get pretty close to them. Make sure the light's on. You're good to go.
Chairman Walden, Ranking Member Eshoo, and members of the Subcommittee on Communications and Technology, it is my pleasure to have this opportunity to testify at your hearing today on the future of video, and thank you for inviting me to participate. My name is Rob Johnson. I'm one of the founders of Sky Angel and its Chief Executive Officer. Sky Angel was founded for the purpose of providing American families with a high quality and affordable video distribution service in their homes that would offer exclusively family-friendly programming. Today it offers more than 80 channels that are live linear programming networks, many of which are familiar in American households, such as the Hallmark Channel, Fox News, the NFL Channel, Bloomberg, and the Weather Channel, to name a few. Also, we'll be adding a new African-American family channel started by Magic Johnson. SkyAngel was the first American video programming distributor to provide a service which uses Internet Protocol television technology, or IPTV, and a set-top box. Subscribers cannot access SkyAngel's encrypted programming without a set-top box, which has broadband internet inputs, including home wireless router access and video outputs that connect directly to their television sets. SkyAngel is not a web-based service, and no external computer is needed to subscribe to or receive SkyAngel programming. All any American family needs for SkyAngel is a television set and a broadband internet service of modest capability. Our set-top boxes look and act just like the ones that consumers ordinarily use at home. Here is one of them, right here. A SkyAngel subscriber selects programming with the use of a typical remote control. The subscriber simply uses our remote to scroll up and down the screens of live channel choices and then clicks on the selection he or she wants to watch. From a consumer's perspective, the SkyAngel service is functionally identical to typical cable or satellite video distribution. SkyAngel offers consumers a competitive alternative to other MVPD systems at affordable rates. Currently, our complete package of more than 80 live video and audio programming channels costs $32.99 a month. It includes unlimited access to a large VOD library of movies, which are also family-friendly. We have recently rebranded the package as Fave TV. We have a less expensive inspirational package of programming, which is also available to the iPad. Our goal is to offer a safe haven for families and children to enjoy as large a selection as possible of live video and audio programming and recorded video programming without fear of exposure to graphic, sexual, or other highly objectionable content. We are a proud recipient of the seal of approval from the Parents Television Council. American families can have SkyAngel in their homes as an exclusive source of wholesome video entertainment, or they can subscribe and have SkyAngel in addition to another MVPD. The choice is theirs. Our business model is not complicated. We enter into written agreements with programmers for distribution of programming to SkyAngel subscribers via our IPTV system. We pay the programmers monthly fees per SkyAngel subscriber who receives the programmer's channel. SkyAngel enters into subscription relationships with consumers for multiple live linear channels of programming. We downlink our channels at our state-of-the-art head-end located outside of Chattanooga. We provide our subscribers with set-top boxes which are necessary to receive the programming from SkyAngel, and we directly and remotely control the programming through the set-top box at all times. Unfortunately, we have been faced with significant problems in obtaining access to family-friendly programming channels. One shocking example is C-SPAN, which is supposed to be a public service, but C-SPAN refuses to deal with us. About 3 years ago, C-SPAN entered into an agreement with us for distribution of C-SPAN channels on the SkyAngel system. However, C-SPAN cut its service off only 3 days after we started carrying it, and we had a signed contract. C-SPAN officials told us that they had, quote, made a mistake in permitting SkyAngel to carry its channels without any other explanation. As everyone knows, C-SPAN is offered on the internet as a free public service to all, but as perhaps fewer people know, C-SPAN is controlled by the cable television industry. In addition to the shocking decision of C-SPAN to cut us off, a number of large programmers have refused to deal with SkyAngel for the distribution of must-have family-oriented programming, saying or implying that they want to avoid conflicts with the big players in the video distribution industry. And unlike C-SPAN, which is supposed to be a public service, commercial programmers that refuse to deal with us are passing up the higher subscriber rates that SkyAngel typically pays because we are too small to have any real bargaining power. Discovery Communications is the most obvious example of a large programmer that refuses a lucrative distribution agreement with SkyAngel in order to stifle competition. My written statement describes our problems with Discovery in some detail, but basically Discovery cut us off from receiving their channels 2 years into a 7-year distribution agreement. Discovery has never offered a coherent explanation for its actions, which did not make economic sense. We are positive that it was anti-competitive in nature, trying to deter a new startup company using IPTV technology. Trying to right a wrong, we filed a program access complaint with the FCC against Discovery in March of 2010. To date, the FCC has never made a substantive ruling on that case, even though the FCC's own decisions say that they will decide program access complaints within 5 months, and the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals is scrutinizing the FCC's delay in acting on our program access complaint. Nonetheless, 27 months have passed without substantive action by the FCC, so Tiny Sky Angel remains injured by the unfair programming decisions of multi-billion-dollar Discovery Communication and its affiliated program distribution interests. We believe that our experience with starting and operating an innovative new family-oriented video distribution service show that there is anti-competitive conduct in the industry and significant problems with the manner in which the FCC is failing to enforce program access laws and regulations so that a valuable new competitive entrant is facing unfair discrimination. The program access requirements under the 1992 Cable Act require fair treatment of competitors such as Sky Angel, but those requirements are not being enforced. The will of Congress is being ignored, and competition by Sky Angel and likely others is being stifled. We believe that the public interest in supporting competition in video distribution, expanded use of the internet, diversity in programming sources, and affordable choices for American families requires the attention of the Congress to ensure that the existing legal framework is fairly and properly enforced. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify, and I would be pleased to answer any questions that you may have or provide you with any additional information.
Mr. Johnson, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
We'll look forward to following up with some questions. We'll now turn to Gigi Sohn, the President and CEO of Public Knowledge. Gigi, we're delighted to have you here today. We look forward to your comments as well.
Chairman Walden, Ranking Member Eshoo, members of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting me to talk about the future of video. There is widespread agreement that we are currently living in the golden age of television. But despite all the great programming and groundbreaking devices, Americans are still locked into a TV business model that limits competition and choice, keeps prices high for video, and limits technology and online video from achieving their full potential. This business model is made possible largely by an outdated regulatory structure created by incumbents to gain competitive advantage. It is time for policymakers to revamp this regulatory structure so that new video competition can thrive, giving consumers greater options and the ability to watch video whenever they want and on the device of their choosing. This will result in lower prices, better services, and more flexibility and control for consumers. The Internet is changing the video marketplace just as it changed the market for music, books, and other forms of media. Consumers are attempting to drive this change by demanding that more content be provided to them through the Internet. One grassroots campaign by consumers called Take My Money HBO advocates for HBO content, which is only available if you subscribe to cable or satellite TV service, to be available for purchase on the Internet. More than 60,000 people visited the petition website within 12 hours of its launch, leading many of them to express over Twitter their willingness to pay money directly to HBO only if it were available on the Internet. Despite this level of excitement for Internet video distribution, it is not a foregone conclusion that the Internet will disrupt the video marketplace. Dominant players in the market today control both the content their online competitors need for their service and the pipes they must use to reach consumers. As a result, much high-value programming is not available to online video providers. They also have to contend with artificially and arbitrarily low data caps and other discriminatory practices that keep them from reaching their full potential. So while it's inevitable that IP technologies and the Internet will play an ever larger part of video delivery, it's not inevitable that the market will reach its full competitive potential. That's why policymakers should extend policies that ensure that new competitors, like Sky Angel, can access high-value content at reasonable prices. If they do this while at the same time protecting Internet openness, they can ensure that the video marketplace normalizes and becomes truly competitive. There are other regulations that permeate the video marketplace that should be repealed today. The network non-duplication, syndicated exclusivity, and sports blackout rules do little more than preserve old business models. If these protectionist rules ever made any sense in the pre-Internet era, they certainly don't today. Representative Scalise and Senator DeMint are on the right track with their bill that would clear away much of the regulatory underbrush that holds back the evolution of the video marketplace. although the bill does go too far by eliminating media ownership restrictions. Other rules, like retransmission consent, the compulsory copyright license, and must carry, are also outdated, but they are part of an interwoven fabric of regulatory and business expectations. They should be reformed, but cautiously, and eventually eliminated. And copyright law is also regulation that is often misused to hold back innovation. Witness the lawsuits against Aereo and Dish's AutoHop service. By taking these simple steps, policymakers will be able to facilitate the development of competitive online video and subsequently disengage from regulations that were designed to counter the effects of bottleneck control. If they fail to do this, it is likely that incumbents will continue to shape the development of the video market and extend their current dominance indefinitely. While the internet provides grounds for hope that the future of video will be much better for consumers, a lot of work remains for this hope to become reality. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Sohn, thank you for being here. We appreciate your testimony on this very important set of issues. Now we'll welcome David Hyman, the General Counsel for Netflix. Mr. Hyman, thank you for being here. We look forward to your testimony. Oh, you know, I know we did audio the last hearing, but if you could, yeah, just touch that button and make sure it's on. Okay.
Now it's even greener.
There we go.
There we go.
Thank you.
Good morning. Netflix helped pioneer streaming movies and TV shows over the internet. In 2008, we began to deliver instant streaming video to televisions through the use of a handful of internet-connected devices. Today, over 23 million consumers in the United States use the Netflix streaming service on more than 900 different types of devices, including game consoles, mobile phones, and tablets. In fact, Netflix delivers close to 1 billion hours of streaming movies and TV shows to its members every month. The internet delivery of video provides consumers with unprecedented freedom and control over what video programming they can watch, as well as when and where they can watch it. This is the future of video. Increased demand for internet video is driving consumer adoption of broadband. It's spurring a wave of innovation in the consumer electronics industry, with virtually all new devices being internet connected. Innovation leaders like Netflix are developing new methods for delivering the petabytes of video data traversing the internet. Just a few weeks ago, we announced the rollout of our Open Connect network, a single-purpose content delivery network focused on the efficient distribution of large media files. Our goal here is to help make a faster and less expensive internet for all. And to this end, we are connecting to ISPs free of charge and making our hardware design and open source software components publicly available. User interfaces, or UIs, through which consumers discover and engage with video are likewise evolving. The typical linear channel selection grid that uses the up-down, left-right remote to access content will likely be replaced with intuitive and visually stimulating UIs that use motion, touch, and voice as means of control. Over the next few years, UIs will evolve in amazing ways. A decade from now, choosing a linear feed from a broadcast grid of 200 channels will feel as odd as using a television dial to change channels does today. The internet is helping to reconceptualize how content is made and consumed. Last year, for example, Netflix announced it would be offering several original television series to its members. This is really the first time that such high-quality productions will be debuted through the internet. Our first show will be House of Cards, a political thriller set right here in Washington, D.C. The series stars Kevin Spacey and Robin Wright and is directed by David Fincher. We will be experimenting with how our programs are released, likely offering multiple episodes or perhaps even whole seasons at one time. In doing so, Netflix is giving artists like Mr. Fincher greater latitude to create compelling stories while giving our members the freedom to watch world-class content in a way that suits their individual preferences. Video services like Netflix are leveraging the power of the internet to help consumers discover content they will love. Using recommendation and merchandising technology, Netflix is helping to expand the reach and popularity of video content. For example, the availability on Netflix of all 4 prior seasons of the series Mad Men helped drive a 20% increase in those watching this season's opening episode. By combining technology with consumer choice, we were able to find an untapped audience of more than 1 million viewers for a show in its 5th season. This is just one example of how traditional and emerging video distribution platforms can complement one another. All this change, however, has led to speculation about the demise of traditional video distribution platforms and networks. But it is our belief that these platforms and networks will also adapt to today's shifting video landscape. We see the beginnings of this with various authenticated internet video offerings, commonly referred to as TV Everywhere. These offerings provide cable subscribers on-demand access to a variety of content through internet-connected devices like the iPod, the iPad, and the Xbox. In this way, cable subscribers are afforded many of the benefits of internet video within the bundled offering of their cable service. To get a good feel for this implementation, I would recommend that you take a look at Comcast's StreamPix, HBO Go, or Showtime's TV Everywhere offering. These implementations will likely grow in popularity, and consumers will increasingly view traditional cable networks on devices connected to the internet. At Netflix, especially as we focus on streaming and begin to offer original content, we are often asked if we are not becoming more like a traditional network such as HBO. The fact, however, is that these networks are becoming more like Netflix. As traditional platforms and networks move to distribute their programming in an on-demand fashion over the internet, they are beginning to compete more directly with pure-play or over-the-top internet video providers like Netflix. As this trend continues, issues such as discriminatory data caps and IP interconnection must be examined with a much more discerning eye. When you couple limited broadband competition with a strong desire to protect legacy video businesses, you have both the means and the motivation to engage in anti-competitive behavior. Add to this mix a regulatory and legislative framework largely crafted before the modern internet era, and you have the makings for confusion and gamesmanship. Competition certainly leads to innovation and growing consumer choice. In large part because of innovation from internet players like Netflix, traditional platforms and networks are changing their longstanding ways of doing business. In adapting to this changing landscape, these platforms and networks should not be permitted to unfairly leverage their data delivery networks or content distribution relationships to stifle unaffiliated video providers. I encourage this committee to examine closely the evolving competitive environment for internet-delivered video. Netflix stands ready to work with you and others in the industry to explore various regulatory modifications or other changes that will help assure a competitive and innovative video marketplace for years to come. Thank you for the opportunity to appear for you today, and I look forward to your questions.
Mr. Timon, thank you for your testimony and your participation. We'll now go to Mr. Jim Funk. He's the Senior Vice President of Product Management for Roku. Mr. Funk, thank you for being here. We look forward to your testimony.
Good morning, Chairman Walden, Ranking Member Eshoo, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for inviting me here to testify today about the future of video. My name is Jim Funk, and I am the Senior Vice President of Product Management at Roku. Roku was founded 10 years ago in Silicon Valley. We are a rapidly growing company with less than 200 employees, still small by comparison with other companies represented at this hearing. The company's founder, Anthony Wood, is a serial entrepreneur who, among many accomplishments, started Replay TV and is considered the inventor of the DVR. While the DVR is now among the most popular entertainment devices, Roku is betting on the internet as the future of television. 4 years ago, Roku introduced a small internet-connected set-top box that allowed consumers to stream movies from Netflix over the internet and watch them in high quality on their TVs without needing a computer. The combination of a $99 Roku player and Netflix streaming was a revolutionary offering. Now, 4 years later, there are hundreds of models of TVs, Blu-ray players, game consoles, and set-top boxes offering this streaming video capability. These products can be found today at Best Buy, Walmart, Target, and Amazon.com, marketed by well-known brands such as Apple, Microsoft, Sony, and Samsung. Since the launch of the Roku player, we have sold more than 3 million boxes in the U.S. and now offer a range of very affordable products from $49 to $99. Roku has grown beyond a set-top box and has become an open streaming platform that allows content providers to create applications, which we call channels. Roku now features more than 500 channels that are available to the millions of households which have purchased our streaming players. Most Roku users have a cable or satellite subscription service in addition to their Roku player, and Roku provides both new entertainment choices as well as ways to get more value out of a cable or satellite television service. In addition to Netflix, Roku users can enjoy tens of thousands of TV episodes and movies on demand from services such as Hulu Plus, Amazon Instant Video, Crackle, HBO, and Epix. We offer sports packages for Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NHL, and Major League Soccer, and there is news from NBC, Fox News, The Wall Street Journal, and CNBC. Beyond video, Roku users can enjoy streaming music services like Pandora, internet radio from around the world, photo sharing, and popular games like Angry Birds. Roku is becoming an alternative way to reach consumers for existing video distributors too. We recently announced a partnership with Dish Network to stream their international programming to consumers who may not be able to install a satellite dish. Customers of Time Warner Cable, Verizon, Dish, and other MVPDs can now enjoy on-demand movies and shows from HBO and Epix on Roku. Local broadcasters have even begun to experiment with reaching their audiences on Roku. Today, you can watch local news on demand from broadcast stations located in Madison, Wisconsin, Las Vegas, and Indianapolis. Roku is also a means for content producers who do not have traditional cable or satellite distribution to reach the living room TV via the internet. For example, we have over 75 faith-based channels representing everything from individual congregations to Catholic and Mormon church broadcasts. We even have a channel created by the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee where video of hearings like this are available on demand. We believe that devices like Roku are part of the future of television because of what we already see. The average Roku user streams over 10 hours of video per week, which is almost 1/3 the number of hours that the average American watches traditional TV. Consumers like the new technology of internet streaming because it combines all the new content choices with convenience and value. With the widespread adoption of DVRs, consumers now expect on-demand viewing, and the internet provides virtually unlimited capacity for delivery of on-demand content. In addition, the combination of inexpensive internet-connected devices and the expanding selection of internet video services offer an excellent entertainment value for cost-conscious consumers. I did not come here today to advocate for specific legislation. Our point of view is that devices such as Roku represent an area of exciting innovation in entertainment and information delivery that are finding a home in the living rooms of millions of consumers. These devices are being embraced by all segments of the entertainment industry as a means to expand the business opportunities for legitimate content distribution. They are also driving the adoption of high-speed broadband connections to the benefit of ISPs. Our interest here, and we believe this is also the consumer's interest, is that there continue to be an open marketplace for competition in this space. That includes not only competition between device manufacturers, but also open competition between video services, both traditional and new, as well as competition between internet service providers. The widespread availability of high-speed internet, open to all video sources, is essential to continued growth and innovation in this market. Thank you for your time today. I look forward to your questions.
Mr. Funk, thank you for your testimony. It's most helpful. We'll now go to Mr. Michael Powell, President and CEO of the National Cable and Telecommunications Association. Mr. Powell, we're delighted to have you here today. Please go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Eshoo. It's always a great honor and privilege to appear before this committee. I've done it many times, and I'm proud to be here again. I'm also proud to be here as a representative of America's great success story, the cable operators and cable programmers of the United States, to talk about the future of video. For one reason only, and that this is an industry through its own investment, technological innovation, has contributed to the glimmering present that we're currently enjoying and has every intention of contributing to a more glorious future in the area of video. It's important as a quick reminder to remember that cable industry, when it was first pioneered, was all about making TV better. We brought television to rural America and urban areas it couldn't be reached by traditional broadcast programming. We ultimately developed original programming that led to the iconic brands that most Americans associate with television today: CNN, ESPN, C-SPAN, Discovery, the History Channel. These were all creations of the artists and creators of the cable industry working in cooperation with the production community. We were the first to bring about anytime, any place shifting through video on demand and through DVR, mass deployment of DVRs. And in 1996, when Congress called on the communication space to introduce telephone competition, it was the cable industry that most significantly made an impact, representing almost 25% of all telephone service today. And then there's broadband. Truly, the cable industry stepped up and led to the mass deployment of cable broadband in the United States, now reaching 93% of all homes in America. So we are experiencing, in my judgment, a truly golden age of television. By almost any metric used, particularly those used by the government and FCC, we're experiencing the best we ever have. First and foremost, there is simply more content. We've gone from a 1950s world of 3 channels to one in which there were 100 channels back in '92 to over 900 programming channel sources today. And that continues to explode at a rapid rate. And is it any good? I would submit that TV is producing the finest content that it has in its entire history. The critically acclaimed programs of The Sopranos or Mad Men or Homeland or comedies like Modern Family are truly capturing the imagination of the American public, and I think the industry and content producers and distributors have a great deal to be proud of in terms of the quality. When I was at the FCC, I remember one of our central goals, and I heard it mentioned earlier in the opening statement, is the diversity of content. We don't want all the same stuff. And we are experiencing a period in which we hit on a model that allows true diversity of niche programming to smaller audiences by definitions, but ones that are passionate about the things they believe in. Put simply, if you fish, love music, crave sports, gorge on politics, want your native language, or reflect your community on television, or if you oddly have a fetish for Jersey Shore, it's all out there and available to you. We should be proud of what we've achieved in diversity. We also have more competitive sources for content than ever before. I would fully admit that 20 years ago in 1992, when the Cable Act was passed, the cable industry was a monopoly. It had 98% of multi-channel video distribution in this country. Today, it enjoys 57%. And since the mid to late 90s, its share has remained flat or declined in the face of competitive threat. Today, Americans can choose between cable companies, the satellite companies that rank second and third in subscribership, telcos. You can go buy DVDs at Best Buy, or why not walk down to your corner store and pay $1.20 for a DVD at a Redbox distribution machine. It's an exciting opportunity for the American citizen. But then we haven't seen enough. Then the internet finally began to produce the realization of its promise. We now are looking at extraordinary amounts of internet content and video by a whole host of companies, some represented today. There has been an 80% increase in video streaming since 2008. And by some estimates, 62% of traffic at prime time on the internet is video content. And as we've heard, they're producing original content and more on every conceivable device that can be dreamed up in Apple's Magic Factory or anyone else. That's an exciting place. But this golden age is set against a regulatory environment that is tarnished. I'm a big believer that law is premised on certain factual predicates about markets, economics, and technology. Simply put, today's regulatory regime is built on a foundation that crumbled long ago. I would submit my full testimony for a then and now analysis, but you can quickly see cable once owned 98% of the market, owns 57% today. Cable once owned 54% of the cable channels that you see today. Today they only own 14%. Back in '92, a majority of Americans would watch television over the air. Today that's down to 14%. This is not to suggest that one industry is better than the other, but the predicates on which the law are built long ago crumbled into the sand, and it's high time that they be reevaluated. Finally, I'd like to conclude by simply taking on head-on the conjecture and speculation and active suggestion that somehow the cable industry is actively involved in an effort to destroy or eliminate over-the-top emerging competition. It's just flatly wrong and belied by the facts. First and foremost, we've seen a breathtaking explosion of video streaming content, as I said, an 80% growth. Netflix, who sits next to me, is the largest provider of subscription video in the country, not cable or not satellite. That growth has occurred in the current marketplace. Our policies, caps, or pricing have in no way thwarted a consumer's ability to watch video stream content by any measure. And we are expanding to meet demand consistently, having increased broadband speeds 900% in the last decade, and recently announced plans for startling speeds by the end of the decade. And finally, I would say, Mr. Chairman, remember, we sell broadband. And as the testimonies of the CEO of Roku and the General Counsel of Netflix make clear, their services help stimulate demand for services we sell. I assure you many members of our board are very proud and appreciative of some of those services and what they've done for our business. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Mr. Powell, thank you. We'll look forward to asking a few questions of you and the other panelists. We'll now turn to the President and CEO of Hearst Television, Inc., Mr. David Barrett. Mr. Barrett, thank you for being here. We look forward to your testimony.
Good morning, Chairman Walden, Ranking Member Eshoo, and members of the subcommittee. My name is David Barrett. I'm the President and CEO of Hearst Television. Our company owns 29 TV stations across the country, a number of which are in your home markets. I've traveled here today from New York City on behalf of the the National Association of Broadcasters. You can tell from the makeup of this panel that the future of video is very bright, very diverse, and more inclusive than ever before. Each of us here today plays an important role in the video ecosystem, but what differentiates television broadcasters from every other entity at this table is our unique commitment to serve our local communities and to operate in the public interest. Localism is our mandate, and we breathe it every day. And we supplement our local programming with the most popular national entertainment, news, sports programs to provide viewers with a variety and quality of content that is unmatched by any other medium. Certainly, we cannot discuss the future of video without talking about spectrum, the oxygen of our delivery for over-the-air signals. With concerns over spectrum use intensifying, it's broadcast television that uniquely offers the most efficient use of spectrum to transmit video. The genius of television broadcasting is its one-to-many architecture. For high-demand programming like the Super Bowl and the upcoming Olympics, there's no limit to how many viewers can tune into these games and events. With wireless one-to-one architecture, there is simply not enough spectrum on the planet to allow every viewer to watch the events simultaneously on smartphones or tablet devices. There should be no doubt that we need to focus on the most efficient ways to deliver video to our consumers today and into the future in order to optimize the video experience. To meet the demands for mobility, our industry is today launching broadcast mobile television. New mobile DTV devices and adapters will enable reception of full-motion digital broadcast without the need for additional spectrum. And because broadcast mobile TV relies on our existing over-the-air transmission, we can offer high-quality video without running up expensive consumer costs or exhausting data caps Internet providers impose on their customers. Other innovations on the horizon, such as 3D, 4K, and ultra-high definition, are down the road and around the corner. These innovations will highlight how creatively broadcasters are using their digital spectrum now and will be doing so in the future. As incentive auctions and broadcast repacking is initiated, it's imperative that the FCC policy determinations not jeopardize the opportunity to bring these new and exciting services to life. Our industry recognizes that consumers expect to view our programming on a variety of devices, large and small. In order to make that a reality and preserve our business viability, content producers will need assurance that programming will only be transmitted with prior consent and agreed-upon compensation. In the current television context, retransmission consent allows broadcasters and cable and satellite companies to negotiate in the free market for the value of the broadcast signal. These negotiations are successful because both sides of the deal have skin in the game. We have a mutuality of interest. Broadcasters benefit from the exposure that cable and satellite provides, and likewise, these video operators benefit from reselling our incredibly popular content. It has been suggested by some in the cable industry that cable bills are rising because of the cost of broadcast programming. There's a chart on the screen that would indicate that the data does not support that assertion. As you can see, cable price increases have consistently outpaced inflation for 11 of the last 12 years. In actuality, it is the cable networks that have been collecting the vast majority of carriage fees. This next chart from Kagan shows the differential and the disparity in fees paid to basic cable networks compared to the total fees paid to broadcasters, both on a trailing basis and as projected into the future. In 2012, it's estimated that cable will pay broadcasters approximately $2 billion in retrans fees, while paying basic cable networks almost $29 billion. This does not give effect to the value of the inventory exchange that goes on from cable networks to the cable MSOs, but that amount of money in no way equalizes a $27 million disparity. This is even more confounding when you consider broadcast ratings are many times higher than cable in so many cases. In fact, approximately 95 of the top 100 shows in the recently concluded television season aired on broadcast television, both in the demographic of 18 to 49 and in the demographic of 25 to 54 as measured by Nielsen. In truth, retrans payments are not the driver of increasing cable bills, and the money is not following the audience in terms of what is actually viewed on television in this country. So how do we ensure that our broadcast content is accessible beyond these traditional platforms to the new video technologies evolving at a breakneck speed? I will observe that I think Congress got it right in 1992 when it noted that broadcasters must be allowed to control the use of their signals by anyone engaged in retransmission by whatever means. New companies like Sky Angel are now part of the video marketplace, but it appears to be unclear as to how the law will apply to them and other new entrants. The FCC is currently considering the question of what is a multi-channel video program distributor. These seemingly simple questions have far-reaching implications. Who has program access? Who pays retransmission consent fees? We believe it only makes good sense for the existing retrans consent and exclusivity rules to be applied to all new entrants. As an industry that creates content or acquires the right to content, it's imperative that we have the right to negotiate over how our content is distributed. Congress should reject any erosion of the bedrock principles of retransmission consent and market exclusivity because they are essential to our uniquely local system of broadcasting. Broadcast television is an indispensably important part of today and tomorrow's video ecosystem. As evidenced by our recent multi-billion-dollar investment throughout the digital transition, American broadcasters are prepared to play a major role in the advancement of video services as we look down the road. I look forward to answering your questions when the remarks have been concluded.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. We appreciate your testimony. Our next witness is the chairman of Dish Network, Mr. Charlie Ergen. Mr. Ergen, thank you for being here before the subcommittee. We look forward to your testimony.
Chairman Walden, ranking members SU, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify about the future of video. My name is Charlie Ergen, and I'm co-founder and chairman of Dish Network, the third largest pay TV provider in the United States. We serve approximately 14 million subscribers and employ over 27,000 people. I believe that understanding the future of video goes hand in hand with two simple rules. First, always try to understand what the customer wants. And second, change is inevitable. Embrace it. What do customers want? They want to be able to watch their program on their TV sets, on their phones, on their tablets, no matter where they are. They also want to be able to surf the web or make a phone call, again, no matter where they are. Dish plans to offer consumers the chance to get all of these services from one company. At Dish today, we do a pretty good job of efficiently providing fixed video to the home. But customers increasingly want more than just home video. They want mobile video, they want mobile voice, and they want mobile data. So when you look at the future of video, we need to be able to provide all those communication services to every one of our customers, anywhere, anytime. Our company is moving in that direction. With innovations like Sling, our customers can use a wireless smartphone or tablet from any location to enjoy the video content they've already paid for. We recently purchased Blockbuster and are integrating the video content holdings to enhance our on-demand offerings. We're a leading distributor of DVR technology and continue to innovate so our customers can watch the programming they've paid for whenever, wherever, and however they want. Our new Primetime Anytime and AutoHop technology takes the DVR to a new level, giving consumers the choice to more easily view their preferred programming when they want while skipping what they do not want to see. This means that allowing your kids to watch TV doesn't mean they have no choice but to see commercials for junk food or alcohol. Through AutoHop, Dish did nothing more than improve upon existing legally accepted and widely available technologies that give consumers the ability to record their television shows for playback at home at a more convenient time when they are able to fast forward through or skip over commercials. These are some of the ways we responded to our customers' changing needs, but we still have to go further. In the past, we haven't shrunk from betting the company, so to speak, in order to stay competitive. We went from selling big dishes to launching our own small dish DBS business to give consumers what they want, including mobile, video, voice, and data we will have to take a significant risk once again. Last year, we invested billions of dollars to acquire 2 bankrupt satellite companies with the aim of transforming those assets into a next-generation mobile broadband service. We want to provide consumers with the choice in services and providers that they seek. If we're successful, we'll fuel billions of dollars in investment and create tens of thousands of new jobs in the United States. And this brings me to my second point. Foster change, don't ignore it, or be afraid of it. We're prepared to leverage our experience and financial strength to drive communications and entertainment forward and make them more mobile and dynamic than ever before. We can't get started, however, until the FCC releases updated rules governing how our satellite licenses can be used for terrestrial mobile broadband. Given the overwhelming support and the comments received to date, we hope the FCC will act and finalize the new rules by the end of the summer. We want to build the most advanced wireless network in the United States to compete against the well-established incumbents, but we need to begin as soon as possible to have a chance. And just as wireless rules must be modernized to keep up with consumers and technology, the rules governing how broadcasters and pay TV providers reach retransmission agreements are outdated and in need of change. 20 years ago, when Congress first adopted the retransmission consent process in the 1992 Cable Act, there was typically one cable operator in any given market negotiating with one broadcaster. Today, there are multiple pay TV providers in each market, including satellite, telco, small local, and large regional cable providers. Then, of course, there are new over-the-top video providers like Netflix, Arrow, and others. The broadcaster still maintains a government-sanctioned monopoly on the network programming in his market, while paying TV providers face stiff competition for one another. The result is almost always bad for consumers and for the free market. Broadcasters play the pay TV providers against one another. They cut off the most popular sports and entertainment programming if their demands for drastically higher rate increases are not met. Consumers lose because they cannot see the programming they paid for. They end up paying high rates, or both. And the problem is only getting worse, with more blackouts and more broadcaster abuses. From where we sit, the broadcasters cling to the status quo instead of meeting consumer demand and embracing new technologies and business models. The retransmission consent regime is a prime example of an outdated government policy in need of an overhaul by Congress and/or the FCC. It is incredible to see how much we've changed since 1992. Likely, there were few of us who used the internet back then or had a cell phone. The idea of streaming movies or TVs to a smartphone was science fiction. Just as businesses must foster change in a rapidly evolving video marketplace to keep pace with what the consumer wants, government should work to ensure its regulations mirror today's competitive realities, consumer expectations, and advances in technologies. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Mr. Ergen, thank you for your testimony. And now our final witness, Michael O'Leary, who is the Senior Executive Vice President for Global Policy and External Affairs of the Motion Picture Association of America. Mr. O'Leary, thank you for being here today. We look forward to your comments.
Thank you, Chairman Walden, Ranking Member Eshoo, and members of the committee. I want to thank you all for the opportunity to testify on behalf of the Motion Picture Association and its member companies today. I also want to acknowledge and thank my colleagues on the panel. I'm honored to be with such a distinguished group here this morning. Whether you are at a theater, at home, on the road, or choose to download and view when you want, content creators, consumer electronics companies, and content distributors are working together to provide new, innovative options for audiences to easily access high-quality content. We welcome this opportunity to testify and work with this subcommittee as you consider appropriate policies for the future of video. This is an important discussion, and we are pleased to be a part of it. Like all successful businesses, we are driven by the desire to create and meet consumer demand for the products that we produce. We are listening to our audiences, we are attuned to their desires, and every day we are developing innovative new ways to give viewers the experiences that they want. Audiences today want to enjoy movies on multiple platforms, from the big screen to televisions of all sizes to computers and tablets and even on their phones. We are partnering with companies of all stripes from around the globe, including YouTube, Facebook, Netflix, Roku, and soon with others that are no doubt some other new platform which exists only in the mind of some inventive young person out there. All of these exciting innovations in distribution benefit both the consumers who receive the high-quality viewing experiences that they want and the creators who take the risk and invest in these productions in the first instance. For many people all around the world, there is no substitute for the theater-going experience. The big screen is the foundation of the American movie industry. Creating wonderful movies that people can watch in movie theaters is an important part of America's rich history, but is equally a part of the present and the future of video. In addition to utilizing cutting-edge and sophisticated visual and special effects in our productions, Our companies have embraced 3D, IMAX, and brilliant sound that has enhanced and transformed the movie theater experience. The theater will continue to play a significant role in the future of how people around the globe are entertained. But our member companies are not just making movies available for the big screen. For decades now, people have watched movies on television, but that experience is changing and improving too with each passing day. Today, our programs are being delivered to television screens by over-the-air digital broadcasts and through an astonishing range of channel choices enabled by our distribution partners in the cable and satellite business. Audiences are able to watch these programs at the time of the original airing or at the time of their choosing, either through the DVR or through an increasing array of video demand options. In addition, with the advent of interactive television, Blu-ray players, Roku boxes, Microsoft's Xbox 360, the Sony PlayStation, Nintendo's Wii, and Apple TV, just to name a few, consumers can watch HD movies and TV shows streamed across the internet in their home through services like Netflix, Vudu, Hulu, or other services too many to list. Audiences now find entertainment on their mobile devices as well. All of the major motion picture studios distribute full-length films and television shows directly to consumer mobile devices through major mobile operators such as AT&T, Sprint, and Verizon. The ability to access high-quality content is also, as you've heard this morning, thriving online, where competitors for consumers' attention are providing new offerings every week. In just a few short years, the quality of video delivery has improved tremendously, and with it, literally hundreds of licensed online services have sprung up around the world. Among them is HBO Go, which adds significant value to existing subscribers by providing online access to HBO programming. And that's not simply the programming that's available on TV today, that's basically all of their catalog in the past as well. Netflix, as you heard, is not only delivering a staggering number of movies online, but is also moving into the production of online content, original content rather. YouTube and Facebook are entering into agreements to distribute movies as well. Online services today cater to every manner of consumer viewing model, including rental, download to own, subscriptions, and ad-supported viewing. They are provided by every conceivable type of commercial entity, including technology companies like Apple's iTunes, broadcast television networks like ABC, CBS, Fox, and NBC, cable networks like the Comedy Channel, TBS, and USA, paid television channels like HBO and Epix, telecommunications, cable, and satellite providers like AT&T, Dish, and Comcast, retailers and retailers like Amazon, Best, Blockbuster, Netflix, and Walmart, and gaming systems, as I mentioned, like PlayStation and Xbox, and new ventures devoted entirely to delivering great content seamlessly, such as Crackle and Hulu. Finally, Mr. Chairman, a word about portability. Simply put, today audiences want the convenience to access the content they purchased on a variety of devices without having to buy the same thing twice, and we're delivering to that promise. This began a few years ago as our company started to include with mini DVD and Blu-ray disc titles a transferable or downloadable digital copy for consumers to use on their computers or their portable devices. Now there are a variety of ways to buy once and play everywhere. One exciting innovation comes from the digital entertainment content ecosystem, which is a consortium of more than 60 studios, retail stores, and technology firms that has created Ultraviolet, which is a cloud-based digital storage locker for consumer content. It works like this. When a consumer purchases ultraviolet media, such as a Blu-ray or DVD or internet download, the consumer receives the enduring right to access that content on any ultraviolet device registered to their household, and to enjoy that content via streaming through the devices at home or on the go. Presently, over 5,000 titles are available through Ultraviolet, and over 3 million consumers have set up accounts in less than 1 year. This spring, Walmart began offering consumers the ability to convert their current DVD and Blu-ray collections to digital ultraviolet copies that can both download and stream. Walmart estimates that the average user of this service brings about 7 discs to the store, and each conversion takes approximately a minute. Other complementary digital initiatives are also being developed, such as Disney Studio All Access, which will provide consumers with easy access to Disney content across multiple digital video services and devices. In closing, Mr. Chairman, we are relentlessly innovating to keep pace with the evolving demands of our audience and to give them more choices on how they view our content. We are committed to that. As this committee considers the appropriate policies for the future of video, we hope that you will continue to recognize that as promising as these new forms of distribution are, they all need content to reach their full potential. a video streaming site, a satellite television company, a broadcaster. They are all terrific technologies, but without the content that consumers want, they simply don't reach their full potential. Make no mistake, we will always have an incentive to seek out new ways for our content to be distributed, but we must be allowed to be compensated for it, and we must be a part of the discussions on how it is distributed. The topic today is an important one, and we are pleased to be a part of this dialogue, and we look forward to working with you in the weeks and months ahead. Again, Chairman Walden, Ranking Member Eshoo, I want to thank you for your time this morning.
Mr. O'Leary, thank you for your testimony, and thanks to all of our witnesses for enlightening us on your views on these very important issues related to the world of video. I'm going to start my question with Mr. Johnson. Appreciate your comments and the situation you face. And I want to just kind of get above your company per se, but raise the issues that come up in this new world we're in. I understand why you'd want the protections of the Communications Act that affords multi-channel video program distributors, but are you prepared for the responsibilities? And so this probably goes to others as well. For example, are you willing to live under the must-carry rules, the rules requiring the competitive availability of set-top boxes, the network non-duplication and syndicated exclusivity rules, and the closed captioning and emergency information requirements? So that kind of comes, that's all the other cars attached to the Communications Act.
Yes.
I mean, tell me what that means to your world, and then...
Chairman Walden, we're currently already offering closed caption. We currently offer the EAS service. As far as must-carry retransmission consent, we're not going to be carrying any type of local broadcasting. We've done a marketing agreement with a company called Antennas Direct, which sells over-the-air digital antennas, so that our subscribers that want to receive over-the-air programming can do that through them. So we will not be entering into any retransmission consent issues.
But what if you were required to?
Well, we'd have to look at that when it happens.
So I'm going to ask the same of Mr. Hyman and Mr. Funk. Given the world you're operating in now, do you want everything that's in the Communications Act good and, some might argue, burdensome?
I think our position is the current situation where there's a competitive environment to innovate is probably the right approach. There are some parts of the requirements that I think will naturally come to the market, such as closed captioning and other things that are benefit to consumers. But a lot of the regulations that have been written were really written for a different environment than exists today.
Mr. Hyman?
Sure. I agree with Mr. Funk in the sense that I think this highlights some of the antiquated notions of the Cable Act with the definition of MVPD. And I also think that it's something that in connection with determining MVPD should be done on a broader scale than in a single regulatory filing.
All right. Mr. Johnson, Mr. Hyman, Mr. Powell, Mr. Ergen. Isn't it a little strange that a child could be watching the Sprout channels Caillou on the same television in the same living room, but the way that programming got there may have been subject to different rules depending on whether it was provided by Sky Angel, Netflix, a cable company, or Dish? Shouldn't the regulatory or non-regulatory treatment be the same? Mr. Johnson, I'll start with you.
Well, we're asking for is a level playing field, that we have the same access to the programming that our competitors do, and because of the definition of MVPD is up in question,
right?
We've not been able to have the access to that programming.
Mr. Ergen?
Well, in general, I'd say yes, the rules should be the same. Whether you either, to your earlier point, Chairman's earlier point, if you're going to be an MVP provider, get all the rules, or eliminate the rules for the current incumbents. Having said that, there are cases where things are a little bit different between the technologies, and I think you have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. Cable is more of a local service. Satellite, for example, is a national service. It remains to be seen how the IP networks that Mr. Johnson and others are doing, are those going to be national, or are those going to be local?
Or global?
It depends on there may be some differences because of that.
Mr. Powell?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I largely agree with Mr. Ergen. I think what you're having is this is just a continued evolution of the challenge of convergence, in which technologies increasingly bring sameness to the way things are provided and distributed. But that said, I wouldn't make the hallmark of suggesting that things are similarly situated just because they can produce the same content, the same show. There are different business models, different terms, different technologies underlying it. The cable industry spends $186 billion over a decade to build an infrastructure that's optimized for premium, high-quality, low-latency content. That's very different than the same content being sold on iTunes for $2.99 in a model largely designed to sell iPods more than it is designed to sell content. So as long as we're cognizant of these different business models are often pursuing different central objectives, just because they have the same content doesn't necessarily make them identical. But as we look at a new statute, I do think there should be more sameness than there is today.
All right. My time has expired, but really trying to get to the heart of the issue here is everybody wants a little different deal, the other guy's deal. And so we're trying to sit here and figure out what's the right regulatory regime to really spur innovation, competition, and a marketplace that functions. So your input is most valuable. With that, I'll turn to my colleague from California, the woman who is proud to represent innovation and technology, Ms. Eshoo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you've hit the nail on the head because I think that we all want to see an acceleration of innovation, that it not only be, that we motivate things through whatever it might be, a change of the law, whatever rules at the FCC, because this is really one of the more exciting areas relative to our national economy that holds so much promise. And there's an insatiable appetite on the part of consumers. And so I think this morning's hearing is really highly instructive, but there are, right below the surface, there are all these different cases. So I have 4 questions that I want to ask, starting with Mr. Funk, Mr. Hyman, and Ms. Sohn. We know, we're very well aware of the consumer demand for innovative data-intensive video applications like Netflix, Amazon Video, and Hulu. They all continue to grow, while at the same time the wireless carriers are moving away from the unlimited data plans. There was a piece in the New York Times yesterday that talked about broadband moving to meters. First of all, do you think that this curtails innovation? And if so, how would you address it?
Should I start? Well, first of all, there have been speed-based tiers in Internet service for some time. So the idea of some different classes of service for Internet consumers is not new. I think the important thing is that as long as there's competition among Internet service providers, providers who give good value to consumers will get the business. And if the tiers become restrictive in a way that they disadvantage some services or restrict choice in a competitive market, companies that provide those services will not succeed. So I think the key here is really competition in order to ensure that the right outcome is.
Thank you.
Get the right outcome.
Thank you. Let's go quickly. I've got 4
I was going to say,
questions.
there's been a lot
Thank
of talk about the competition in the video marketplace.
Traveled across the country, and you've got 30 seconds.
Thousands of video channels, and it's the golden age of video. I think that's true. I think the one thing that we have to be mindful of, and that I would suggest this committee to be mindful of, is that Internet video, there's only one way to get Internet video, and that is over an Internet pipe. And there are very few carriers that provide Internet video. In some places, there is only one carrier that people can access that. And the ability to have competition in that marketplace is something that you guys should be mindful of as you go on and think about Internet video. And with respect to our issues out there, the issues that we have raised and been fairly public about is the application of discriminatory data caps in the way in which the same content that's delivered over the same pipe.
When are they discriminatory and when are they not?
When are they and when are they not? So the same content from Netflix or the same content from, for instance, Comcast over StreamPix, one counts against the data cap and the other one doesn't. So from our standpoint, if you're going to implement data caps, there is innovation issues associated with data caps, but they should be applied equally or not applied at all.
So let me give you an example. I agree with my colleagues to the left. So a perfect example of discriminatory data caps that we're concerned about is what Comcast is doing with the Xbox 360. So it's exempting its own Xfinity app from the data cap, but Netflix and others are subject to the data cap. So while we don't think that data caps are inherently bad, when they're arbitrary, they can be abused, they can be anti-competitive. Remember, ISPs also own video services. So there's an incentive and an ability to discriminate against online video competitors. And if I could just say one more thing, one of the things that really galls us is that we have been asking, public knowledge has been asking the FCC now for almost 2 years to look at data caps, not to regulate them, look at them, find out how they're evaluated, how they're raised or lowered, so people can have an idea of what these caps are intended to do. And they've just refused.
Thank you. Mr. Funk, it's my understanding that 20% of your customers have dropped their cable or satellite service. What factors do you think would lead more of your customers to consider Roku as an alternative rather than a traditional, complementing, rather than a complement to a traditional cable or satellite service?
We do see a percentage of our users who have cut the cord, as it's called, and dropped their cable or satellite package. It's the minority, as you said. I think there's a variety of reasons for this. Some cases it's cost, in some cases it might be a living situation or just individual preferences on programming. I think what's interesting is that there are now choices that allow consumers that opportunity. So things like Netflix and Hulu Plus give people who want potentially a different selection of video at a lower price the ability to get that. So I think increased choice of offerings is really the key to providing the right service for all consumers. I think we provide one method for doing that. I think you'll see a lot more innovation in the coming months and years as to how to do that better. So we're optimistic that cord cutting will lead to continued video consumption, but just in different fashions.
Thank you. I had 4 questions. I'll submit the other 2 in writing. I want to thank all the witnesses because together you've made this not only an important but an instructive hearing on the future of video. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Chairman Emeritus Mr. Barton.
Thank you, Mr. Terry. I first want to take a little victory lap this morning. The college presidents announced yesterday we're going to have a non-BCS football playoff in college football. And I can take a little bit of credit because back when I was chairman of this committee, we had some hearings on that, and we got the ball rolling, and they announced a 4-team playoff. So I want to commend them, but also take credit for this committee highlighting that issue several years ago. I don't think the 4-team playoff is the ultimate, but it's a start in the right direction. When they get to 8 or 16, I think they'll have it. But my first question is to the audience. I want somebody in the audience to tell me the original analog televisions, how many channels were on them? Anybody that's my age ought to know. I see one hand out there. How many? Somebody. No, not how many you got, but how many were on the dial. There were 13. There were 13, 2 to 13, but there was no number 1. I never understood why there was no number 1. But there were 13. You could go up to 13. As Mr. Powell just pointed out, his testimony, there's like 900 programs available now. We've gone from my first TV, we got 1 channel on a good day, 1 channel. And now we've got thousands, literally. I think it is time to review the telecommunication video market. I think Mr. Waldron and Ms. Eshu and Mr. Upton and Mr. Waxman are to be commended for agreeing to do this hearing. I think there's some principles that we need to remember as we look at this.
and this is just my scratches, so this, I don't claim this is the universe, but obviously in order to have a program, you've got to have a creator. In this country, we've never regulated the creator of the programming. Then you have to have a producer, and to my knowledge, we've never regulated the producers. Now, there have been efforts at censorship, but in terms of creativity and production, we basically let that be a free market operation. Once you have a program, you've got to have somebody to package it and market it. You have to have somebody to transmit it. And then obviously you have to have somebody to buy it, somebody to view it, somebody to consume it. When you get into the packaging and the transmission is where we've had a role for government. I think it's a truism that form follows function. In our original regulatory format was based on the fact that whether it was radio or television, there was a potential for a natural monopoly, and government either tries to prevent monopoly or regulate monopoly. And a lot of the rules that we're talking about here originated when the radio market and the early TV market was getting started. As Mr. Powell's pointed out, the advent of the cable industry brought video to more people, but it also brought additional regulation. I was the only member of the committee back in the 80s that voted against the re-regulation of cable. The only one on either side of the aisle when President Bush, the first President Bush was president, and I was at the White House when we deregulated cable. When we passed the Telecommunications Act in 1996, there are at least 4 and maybe 5 or 6 witnesses at this table that their industry or their company did not exist. Did not exist. I couldn't tell you today what Roku is. And I listened to the president of the Roku try to explain what it is. So I think, Mr. Chairman, I know it's too late to do a major bill in this Congress, but I hope in the next Congress we take this up and use original principles to review the market. And in general, I think we're better off having less regulation than more, and more enterprise and more market competition than less. The role of government is to provide a level playing field, to prevent a monopoly if possible. If we can't prevent a monopoly, to try to prevent undue market share and be fair to all. So I think this is an excellent hearing, and I look forward to big things happening on this committee in the next Congress. The last thing I'll say, if we're going to do big things, it has to be done on a bipartisan basis. This is not a partisan issue. It will go nowhere if it becomes R versus D. It has to be done in a bipartisan basis. And the good news is, with the leadership on both sides of this committee, that is a very doable deal. With that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Would agree. Gentlelady from California, you are now recognized for your 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to welcome all the witnesses before us today. And I would just like to acknowledge the great work that a Hearst-owned station, KCRA, is doing for my constituents in Sacramento. You know, local news and weather, as well as other local programming, is important to all Americans, not just to my constituents. And I'd like to get a better understanding from our witnesses about the role of retransmission consent in preserving our shared commitment to localism. Mr. Ergen, I understand that retransmission consent payments are used by broadcasters to support local news and local weather. How would you respond to concerns that changes in the retransmission consent regime could undermine quality local programming?
Thank you for the question. First of all, retransmission consents, and maybe Mr. Barrett can give us a little bit more information on this. In my understanding, generally goes to some to the network. It's changed where the network themselves or the major network may take some of that, and a large part of retransmission consents does not actually flow to the local broadcasters anymore. That's the way it started, but now the national network will take a large portion of that. And then second, of course, the broadcast model is a two-pronged model: the retransmission consent fees and also advertising fees. So they get revenue from two sources. The troubling thing is that despite the fact that retransmission fees have gone up at probably 400% since I started in this business, the actual localism and the local level has actually gone down from a local news perspective, in the sense that to cut cost and operate more efficiently, many broadcasters are sharing local news networks and so forth. In many cities today, you'll see that a network show, a news show, will be on multiple networks, are produced, or there'll be a sharing of resources. So very similar that the newspaper industry did as well.
Sure. Mr. Barrett, would you like to comment on that?
Well, I disagree. A 21st century media company today needs a dual revenue stream, and for years the television industry operated with an advertising-only model. The cable industry was launched and helped us get our signal into rural areas, but then built a significant business on the back of the most popular programming available to Americans in every community in this country, and that was local television. I would say to you that we are using, as an industry, the retransmission consent fees to invest in our local businesses. It helps support the investment we made in digital technology, which I dimension at multi-billions of dollars over the last decade. I think you've seen most local stations, many local stations, go from producing 20 hours a week of programming to 40 hours a week of programming exclusively in the local news genre. We have added multicast channels on our signals now, which we're trying to get clearance on satellite and cable. So I would disagree with Mr. Ergen that money is not being used in a constructive way to advance the business interest of local television.
Okay, well, Mr. Barrett, how would you respond to concerns some parties have raised about the impact of broadcast stations' coordination and consolidation on retransmission consent negotiations?
Well, I think, speaking for our company, we negotiate only on behalf of the owned stations of the Hearst Corporation. Other companies have pooled some of their retransmission consent negotiations, have created bundles, but I believe in most cases, in all cases, people have been smart enough to acknowledge that they have to break up a bundle. Mr. Ergen wants to buy a station where we have a duopoly separately from KCRA. If he'd like to buy KQCA, I'll sell him KQCA separately. I'll sell him KCRA separately.
Mr. Ergen, your thoughts quickly.
Yeah, I think the problem is that in retransmission consent, the local broadcaster is in fact a government-sponsored monopoly. In other words, nobody else can bring that signal into that marketplace today, into that DMA. So it's a little bit of an unfair fight. And what's happened is that I'll give you one example in Wyoming where one individual got the rights to negotiate for the all three broadcast networks in Cheyenne, Wyoming. So there was either no local networks in Cheyenne, or you had to pay whatever rate.
Would you say,
and so the signal actually had to come down, and so consumers lost because of unfair bargaining between. It's one thing to be an unregulated monopoly. It's another thing then to band together and negotiate on behalf of multiple stations in the same market.
Would you say, though, this is not the same throughout the country? I mean, it appears that what Mr. Barrett says in certain areas, like where Sacramento may not be the same way as where you're talking about in Wyoming and other areas.
I would agree with Mr. Barrett that each broadcaster handles it differently. So Mr. Barrett's company handles it on a very professional manner with just their networks. Other people utilize their market power, and that mischief can happen now, of course, legally sanctioned.
Well, I have run out of my time. I'd like to submit some written questions.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Matsui. Now I recognize myself for 5 minutes. And I'll spend most of my time with you, Mr. Powell. But first I want to just give a little anecdotal story. When I walked into my 17-year-old's room, and by the way, we got him a TV for his room for Christmas, thinking that when he graduates it'll be a good thing for him to take to college. Hopefully he's going to college. But I walk into his room, and he's on his iPhone, and I just say, "Hey, what's going on?" "Oh, just watching Netflix." on his iPhone, and there's a TV sitting right there. And that's the world we're living in. That's the people that are going to dominate the consumer products and video markets for the years to come. I think of turning on the TV. They don't.
Was his TV internet connected?
Good point. Yeah, he has the Xbox 360. So, yeah, so he can do it that way as well, but he just chose to do it on his phone. So, Mr. Powell, it's interesting. You mentioned the 57%. In 1992, Congress was concerned about the cable monopoly. That does not exist today. If you're at 57%, and the folks that are sitting in this panel. So what does that really mean to the cable industry? How is it evolving to be competitive? And in reference to the 92 Act, without, let's try and not be redundant on Ms. Matsui's questions of retransmission, but what other underbrush is there that was from 92 that was just so focused on the cable industry? What do we need to do to clear out the brush? What specific things should Congress look at if we want to review the 92 Act?
Well, the first thing I would say is the beauty of competitive dynamics is you have to increase value for consumers, and you can do that through innovation and evolution of your service. And I think that the competition we faced, first and most formidably from the satellite companies, increased both the quality of content that we were providing, the amount of content we were providing. It forced us to look at new businesses for revenue development to continue to be competitive, which is part of the dynamic that I think helped drive investment in broadband and ultimately brought that into the bundle of services we offer, as well as telephony. If you look at the wonderful things that the over-the-top folks are doing, you see companies cable companies knowing they too have to be able to bring that value to your son, to be able to allow him to watch what they're selling over iPads and Xboxes as well. So I think that dynamic has driven a lot of innovation. I would give you a more global answer about what to change. So I think that the 92 Act had two core fundamental foundational elements. One, that we were a vertically integrated exclusive monopolist, and a whole bunch of other rules that were premised on supporting and subsidizing broadcasting for the protection of the social compact that America supposedly wanted to advance in the context of broadcasting. I think vertical integration rules, when an industry only has about 14% of its operators integrated with content, these would be rules like program access, program carriage, and rules that are premised on the idea that you have to guard against our incentives associated with both being a distributor and owner of content. And I think when we have a dialogue, those are the kinds of rules we should have to talk about. But to be fair and honest, I think you also have to sort of reevaluate elements of the social compact. You know, is it still the policy of the United States that the cable industry should continue to forcefully subsidize the broadcasting model through must-carry, retransmission consent, and other elements?
All right.
I'm not prepared to answer them, but those are the questions.
Well, one last question, and then hopefully we can have time for the broadcasters, Mr. Barrett, to rebut that. But we're getting calls in our office about cable rates going up. And I want to talk, because I think this goes to the vertical integration model that was thought of as cable then, but you're not the content provider today. Could you explain very quickly in 26 seconds how that's impacting the business model and what we should be telling our clients, our constituents?
So price is two things. One, I think any industry in this day and age under economic stress who's not sensitive to affordability of the American consumer is acting at its peril. And I think our industry is very focused and looking for ways to do that. You're seeing companies experimenting with smaller and lower priced packages. You're seeing basic packages being offered for one. Secondly, I think it's very difficult to compare prices over time because there's so much more that's in the suite of bundled services that consumers are buying. DVR, more channels. I would leave you with one statistic. On an hourly basis, cable is about 21 cents per hour. That's cheaper than even Netflix subscription and most other entertainment products in the market.
Is that viewing hours or 24 hours in a day?
Viewing hours. 8 hours a day.
Thank you. At this time, Chair recognizes gentlelady from the Virgin Islands, Ms. Donna Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to all of the panelists this morning. Thank you for holding this hearing. Just a couple of questions. Probably won't use up all of my time. Can you hear me? Okay. Ms. Son, you advocate for eliminating the broadcast must-carry rule, but you also note, on the other hand, the importance of protecting the public and non-commercial stations. So what policies would protect this programming without a must-carry rule?
I think we would be comfortable with preserving must-carry for public stations. But you know, as far as commercial stations are concerned, our feeling is that if local broadcasters are indeed providing good local programming, cablecasters will want to carry them because their customers will demand it. But I don't think they need the protection of must-carry.
I see. And Mr. Barrett, I know one of the concerns are advertising revenues. So how are broadcasters looking to respond to the pressures on advertising revenues from the new technologies and services?
Well, one of our challenges has been to get accurate measurement from Nielsen. It has been a challenge as the world has moved to a time-shifted world of viewing for Nielsen to capture that television viewing, and that has had downward pressure on commercial pricing. Retransmission consent has been a new revenue stream, as we've referenced. The multicast business has been a new revenue stream for us, and we are optimistic that mobile television, as it rolls out over the next several years, will be a new revenue opportunity for local stations as well, and that will help offset some of the downward pressure on advertising.
Is your mic on?
I didn't think so, but
now it's on. I'm a TV broadcaster. I should know that.
Mr. Powell, you and all of the other panel.
Could he answer that again, and we'll stop the time and let him catch up?
Sure.
Our challenge as broadcasters has been to be sure that Nielsen captures the viewing that has occurred on time-shifted on the television experience that is time-shifted on DVRs and the like. And very, very briefly, the new revenue opportunities we have with retransmission consent, multicast, and in the future mobile television, the extent that those ad revenues will help replace and support some of the downward pressure on ad revenues against our core video product.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Powell, you and all of the other panelists have pointed out the way the competitive environment and technology has changed and is continuing to change. And you recommended re-examining a lot of the rules, the regulatory rules, program access, content carriage obligations, as well as must-carry transmission content and non-duplication rights. So some would say that if we were to weaken any of those rules, it would give cable an unfair competitive advantage. Given the wide choices that are available today, how would you respond to that?
It's a great question. I think the way I would characterize it is I don't think the cable industry's position is we're just looking for a wild, abandoned deregulation. I think we're looking for a more rationalized regulatory model that more properly reflects the reality of the market. We think a lot of the rules that we're currently living under, if you accept the way they're premised, would fall under a standard by today's measurements. Now, I'm perfectly willing to entertain that somebody could conceive of a different basis or a different reason for some sort of regulatory rule. But I think that the obligation, the burden should be to prove that from a zero base, meaning given the reality of today, not the legacy of yesterday, why do you still need this rule? Or why do you need some new proposed rule? So I really wouldn't say that I think we're a cooperative partner in trying to make sure the public policy is right, as opposed to just some random get rid of everything because it's stupid. But we do think it should be justified based on what we're seeing in the market. And given all the wonderful things you've heard, we think on balance that would be a dramatically lighter regulatory regime.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we recognize Mr. Stearns for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Barrett, you're getting all the questions, and so I have a little delicate question, which is more or less confined to my congressional district. I represent the University of Florida in Gainesville, and it appears there's a dispute between DirecTV and the ABC affiliate WCJB over transmission consent fees. You're probably not familiar with that.
I'm not familiar with
I
that.
understand.
We own the NBC affiliate in nearby Orlando.
You know, I don't necessarily want to get involved with this business dispute, but some have suggested that because now Gainesville and Alachua County, their DirecTV, they can't even get ABC now. It's a sort of a blackout. And I guess, in your opinion, are these blackouts becoming more frequent?
I think they're very infrequent. Cox happens to own the ABC station in Orlando. We own the NBC affiliate WESH in Orlando, and over the past several years or so, there has been a new NBC affiliate licensed to Gainesville, to that marketplace, and you may infer that we stood aside and did not challenge that NBC affiliate that went into that marketplace.
Mr. Ergen, what's your reply to that? Are these blackouts becoming more frequent? Are they a problem for DirecTV?
They are becoming more frequent. I can speak for
So,
Dish
Mr.
Network.
Chairman, we have a clear difference of opinion here between.
But I think
Barrett and
the
Mr.
record.
Ergen.
I think, and perhaps we can get the committee some
But your
statistics.
position is they're becoming more frequent.
Yeah, I can speak for Dish Network. We had 6 blackouts last year. We've had 9 already this year.
So if you've had 9 this year, and let's take Gainesville for example, and they can't get ABC, so they call you up and say, "Why we can't get ABC?" What do you say?
You basically say you're working with the broadcaster to negotiate a fair rate for them, and you know, what happens is it's a bit of an unfair food fight, because the broadcaster, the consumer has a choice to switch to another video provider, A, and B, they only get their sweeps ratings. Their sweeps ratings only happen 4 times a year, so they only get measured 4 times a year by Nielsen, which affect their advertising rates. Except by law, of my understanding, cable companies can't take down a network during a sweeps rating. So it's just not a fair fight out there today, and it is becoming more prevalent.
What do you think the solution should be? Because is there a solution? It seems like.
I think there's some fairly easy solutions. I mean, as an example, if we're going to make it market determinate, I'm all for that. But that means that we should be able to, if you don't have the Gainesville station, ABC station, and then you either have to go to a standstill arbitration, or you have to have the right to import an ABC station from Orlando, for example, so the customer doesn't do without the ABC network while the dispute's going on. Then you get a free market system working, where it's more of a fair fight between the broadcaster and the
I don't
distributor.
necessarily want to get involved with this dispute, so I mean, do you want to, Mr.
You've
Barrett?
opened Pandora's box.
I know.
We would
Let me
strongly resist the
Well, I've given you a chance to speak, and I've given him, so I don't know, because he'll want to speak afterward. Mr. Barrett, I understand that broadcasters are poised to deploy mobile DTV services to allow viewers to watch live local news, emergency alerts, and other programming on the go. What are the differences between broadband mobile DTV and video over broadband that is currently available on cell phones, and can mobile DTV help alleviate some of the pressure on the wireless bands?
The architecture of the broadcast signal, that is a single point to multi-point distribution, is the superior distribution system. It doesn't run into broadband congestion. If I invited you to a Yankee game in New York City and we wanted to go online, you'd have trouble in Yankee Stadium on any given weekend connecting with a broadband supplier that didn't buffer and didn't have real signal limitations. A over-the-air broadcast signal could touch everyone in that stadium simultaneously, and there would be no signal degradation at all. It's a vastly superior distribution system of the signal.
Okay, my last question, Mr. Ergen. I think we all understand the need for more spectrum. I think the FCC is moving forward on a rule regarding the S-band spectrum Dish recently acquired in order to build out a wireless network. What is the status of this item, and when will the FCC issue its final order on this proceeding, in your opinion?
Well, we first went through a waiver process in last year, and ultimately were denied that waiver by the FCC. Then we went into a rulemaking process, which is now complete, in the sense that all the comments are in from all the parties who might be affected, either in a positive or negative way, by our entry into the wireless business. And now it's just in the rulemaking is now just has to be decided by the full commission, the 5 commissioners, to make a decision. And we're hopeful that they can do that by the end of the summer. Other than time, and realize the FCC has an awful lot of things on their plate, as Michael Powell can speak to when he was there. Absent other than time, they just need to, they have all the facts in to approve it. So we're hopeful they'll do it by the end of the summer, and then that unleashes 40 megahertz of spectrum, and of course, obviously, huge investment in this industry and jobs at a time when, you know, a lot of companies are hoarding their cash because of the uncertainty out there. We're certainly hoarding our cash because we're waiting on the FCC uncertainty, but they can alleviate that problem. So it's a case where business and government can work together to do the right thing for consumers and also unleash productivity and investment in the United States.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Colorado, Ms. DeGette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Sitting here listening to this testimony reinforces my view that this retransmission consent issue is a very messy issue and there's not a one-size solution. Most people would like to see agreements reached that are fair to consumers, and I think one thing almost everybody could agree with is Congress shouldn't put too heavy of a finger on that scale. We should really try to allow the market to come to a solution. I believe that we need access to free and diverse and local news and local programming and information in an emergency. I was just looking at some of my local news on these wildfires in Colorado, and there's a good example of how consumers in Boulder or in Colorado Springs or Fort Collins need to be able to get access to local news. And so that's a balancing that we have to have. And also, several members of the panel talked about mobile TV and how much promise that has. But the strong arguments supporting the value of broadcasting to consumers don't necessarily equate to a justification for pulling a signal from cable or from satellite viewers if retransmission consent negotiations fail. And I'm thinking about this from the standpoint of my constituents who work all day, who barely have time to sit down in front of the television, who want to turn on the first game of the World Series, and they, with hope the Rockies might be in it, although maybe not this year, but they can't get the programming they want because we've had failed retransmission consent talks. And so my first question is a simple question, and I just, if preferable, I would like to have a yes or no, and that question is, do you think blackouts as a result of the failure of these agreements are fair to consumers no matter how rare or how often they might be? Mr. Powell, I'll start with you.
No.
Mr. Barrett?
No.
Ms. Sohn?
No.
And Mr. Ergen?
No.
Okay, thank you. Now, Mr. Ergen, I have a question for you about this auto hop issue. As you testified in your statement, and I think everybody knows, the auto hop technology lets consumers skip over commercials or other things that they don't want to watch. And as you said, that would mean that when kids are watching TV, they wouldn't have to see junk food and alcohol commercials. I would submit that as the fall approaches, many viewers would skip over the shock and awe TV commercials that everybody's going to be treated to in the campaign this fall. And so I'm sorry? Yeah, and the volume too. And so I think the volume is the issue. But if people had auto hop, it would let them decide what they wanted to see. Now, I know that this is in the courts right now, but talking not about the legal issues, but consumer choice and innovation in the free marketplace, doesn't auto hop simply improve on technology that's already available from the DVR to what's possible through the DVR?
Yes. I think it was settled legally 28 years ago in the Betamax case, but the auto hop does what everybody in the pay TV business does with DVRs, which is allows a customer with the push of a button to record a channel or a series of channels, and it allows customers with the push of a button to skip ahead through a commercial. What auto hop does is make it more convenient for customers to do it, just as when I woke up this morning, my alarm went off at 6 o'clock in the morning, as it does every morning, and I don't have to reset it every morning for 6 o'clock, even if I'm in a different time zone. So auto hop allows you then, when you choose to watch a primetime show, you can make the choice to auto hop through the commercials with the push of a button. And so it is just as we've regulated. I've sat through regulation of we have to have a rating system for our TV shows so that parents can block them out. We now have regulations to turn the volume down for commercials. It's amazing we had to do that. It's amazing that commercials could be that loud. And I think that we certainly don't need regulation that prevents a customer. As I understand the broadcaster's point, it is that the consumers do not have the right to skip a commercial and do not have the right to record a show. And I think that, we'll fight the good fight for the consumer on that.
And I've got to say, from the standpoint of the broadcasters, I understand their business plan and their revenue concerns, but I think we have to balance the consumer decision of what they want to see versus that business plan. We need to work something out. I think we can all agree on that. Mr. Barrett's eager to make a point. So, Mr.
I think if this committee is interested in protecting localism, if you're interested in having your local station cover the wildfires in Fort Collins, the auto hopper and that technology will be damaging to the local business model, and you will lose local stations' ability to provide the kind of coverage that's important to you in your district.
Well, and that's why I'm saying I think for the local broadcasters, I'm sympathetic to the business model, but we need to balance that plus the consumers wanting the choice. It's not Dish that wants to have that choice. It's the consumer. So I think we're going to have to work that out. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlelady's time has expired, and now the gentlelady from Tennessee, Ms. Blackburn, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. And I just have a couple of questions that I want to get to today, but I do thank all of you for your patience, for your diligence in continuing to work on this issue. Ms. Sohn, since you're the only female on the panel today, I see 7 guys in you. There's a lot I could say, right? All these guys and you. We need more women down there. Let me go to something you said previously. You basically endorsed having usage-based billing at one point by saying the ISPs should charge a flat rate for a certain amount of bandwidth and then charge a per bit metered rate for usage that goes beyond that limit. So what I wanted to see was if you still agreed with that, and should, let's say if somebody is a Netflix subscriber and they're using a large portion of capacity, as opposed to someone who just checks email and does a little bit of surfing every day, should they be paying the same amount? So where are you on that one?
We don't endorse usage-based billing or data caps. I mean, basically, what we say is data caps are not inherently bad, okay, but they can be abused. They can be used anti-competitively to discourage people from using online video, to disadvantage competitors. So we are very, very concerned about that. One of the problems here is what is the rationale for usage-based billing or data caps? Former Chairman Powell says in his testimony, and he said yesterday in response to questions about the DOJ investigation, well, we have to deal with congestion on our networks. Well, data caps is a very blunt instrument to deal with congestion because congestion only happens at one point in time. Right, so if I'm backing up my data at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm not causing congestion, but that goes against my data cap. So I want to reemphasize that it's really, really important for Congress and the FCC to know how data caps are set, how they're evaluated, how they're moved over time. I mean, Comcast just raised its data cap for the first time in 4 years from 250 gigabytes to 300. Why did it take so long with the explosion of video? So no, we are, we don't think usage-based billing is inherently bad, but it can be abused, and it's very, very important to know how they're used.
Okay. Mr. Powell, let me come to you. You might want to respond to that. And then I want to ask you also to talk a little bit about MFN and most favored nation status, and looking at that plus the alternate distribution method clauses that are there in cable carriage contracts. In Nashville, with a lot of the entertainers, they understand an MFN approach when they're doing shows. And so with a lot of our content producers and people that are pushing content forward. We've got some questions about the MFN and the ADM approach. So if you want to respond to what Ms. Sohn had to say and then answer the second question, that'd be great.
Sure. First, I'd like to highlight something she did say, and by the way, has been echoed by the country's leading regulators, both the chairman of the Federal Communication Commission and the chairman of the Federal Trade Commission, that there's nothing inherently wrong with usage-based pricing, just like there isn't if you run your air conditioning all day long at the lowest temperature and your neighbor chooses to open the windows and have the breeze blow in, you're going to pay more money than your neighbor is as a consequence of your use. So inherently, usage-based pricing is about price fairness, that you're being allocated a portion of the cost consistent with your use. And that is a very well-established economic principle, and we don't think just because you can condemn it in words makes it so. The other thing I would say about caps, first of all, let's be clear, caps are not the industry standard. In fact, as far as I know, after Comcast's recent change, there is not a cable company that employs a cap that penalizes a consumer after they exceed that cap. They're able to move to other pricing bundles or increase capacity. So, this idea that we are all uniformly applying caps as a way of creating artificial scarcity, I think, is not factually accurate. And I do think there is an economically defensible reason for usage-based pricing and threshold models, and it's not about congestion management, as Gigi suggested. It's about how do you fairly monetize a very high fixed cost network. You have to dig up the ground, put this thing in, and you got to charge your end users. And also, I might note, because of net neutrality, we're not allowed to charge other corporations. We have to charge end users alone. And how to do that fairly is the question that cable companies are experimenting with. On MFNs, Congresswoman, honestly, I'm not that much of an expert on the specifics of these contracts. They have been around a long time. I would note that in the DOJ supposed investigation that's underway, DOJ looked at these MFNs in the context of the Comcast-NBC merger and other merger-specific deals and didn't find antitrust violations in those cases in passing on them. So to be honest, they're contract-specific. I'm not usually privy to the contours of them. I think they can serve a beneficial purpose. I also think they can be harmful, but that's what we rely on honest examination for.
Thanks. I appreciate that. My time has expired. Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Now, gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Doyle, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Barrett, I want to thank you for joining us today. I know my constituents in Pittsburgh appreciate the Hearst station that you have there. I just want to elaborate more on Mr. Ergin's comments about the Hopper service. My understanding is that there's a fair use exemption for DVR recordings. Can you explain to me why you believe that the Hopper service is so different than regular DVR service?
I believe it goes beyond the contemplated fair use parameters. I think it's a copyright issue. It's a matter that's in the court right now, and I will be anxious to see how the court adjudicates that. It remains a threat to the local broadcasting system, and one of the best qualities of the American society is that we have a local broadcasting system that's in place in 210 markets, and all of the determinations that you'll make, there's going to be a prioritization and a trade-off of things. And I'm here on behalf of people who are committed to local communities, and I think there's got to be a high prioritization for preserving that localism that these stations provide.
Thank you. Ms. Sohn?
Yeah, it's absolutely not a copyright issue, and to me this is a perfect example about how copyright is misstated and misused, to stop innovation. I mean, the Sony versus Universal case, as Mr. Ergin said, was absolutely clear. The public has a right to record what they want to record off of TV, whether it be a VCR or a DVR. That was 1984. That was a long time ago. Look, people have been skipping commercials for 50 years since the guy who just died invented the remote control. All right? This is about consumer choice. I remember, what was it, about 10 years ago when Jamie Kellner from Fox said it was okay for people to go to the bathroom to skip commercials. So what Mr. Ergin's AutoHop service is doing, it's just turning 3 steps with a remote control into 1, and consumers should have the right to do that.
Thank you. Mr. O'Leary, in your testimony, you spoke about your
ultraviolet service. My understanding is that it's basically a new way for consumers to be able to watch movies through the internet rather than having to purchase a DVD that they can only watch on a DVD player. And I find the service very interesting. I have some questions. On the ultraviolet website, you indicate that customers can stream content to almost any internet-connected device and that they can also download digital copies when they don't have good internet access. Can ultraviolet customers download a digital copy of a film onto any device or just certain compatible devices?
My understanding, Congressman, is that it has to be a device that's registered with the ultraviolet service, and that downloading is a component of it. I think in the first phase, the emphasis, as your question highlighted, is in streaming, but they will have the ability to download it onto different devices,
yeah,
provided they're registered.
I just thought it was unclear on the website. Based on the advertising, it kind of seemed like to me that I could download the content onto any device of my choosing, and I noticed some similar confusion from some other ultraviolet users who thought they were going to get a digital copy of a movie to watch anywhere. Can you explain what some of the approved devices are that I can download my films are? What would be an approved device, for instance?
Well, I think you could download it, for example, onto your laptop, onto a tablet, onto different things like that. I would have to get back to you with a specific list of the types of devices, a complete list of the types of devices that.
Yeah, I'm just curious what these ultraviolet compatible devices are. I think it just might be easier for consumers, when you look at that website and to understand what actually they can use and what they can't use.
Absolutely.
And just to follow up to that, does your service give customers any guarantee that they'll always have access to the purchase they made? Much, I have my old DVDs. Some of them might be scratched up, but I can still go into the closet and pull out that DVD anytime I want because I know they're always there. Is there a guarantee that people will always have access to a purchase they make?
Yeah, yes, Congressman. It's my understanding that this is a perpetual agreement between the consumer and the producer, and that they will have access to those. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With that, I'll yield back.
Thank you. The chair will now recognize himself for 5 minutes. We look at the video marketplace today, it's drastically different than it was in 1992 when Congress passed the Cable Act. Yet the laws and regulations written then still apply today as if a monopoly market power exists and as if innovation has come to a screeching halt. I think it's important for us to go back and, because we take for granted the technology, and, I can look on my video device and watch Swamp People episodes on this video device, and yet the laws that we have on the books today were written when we had these devices for telephones. And so while I can do things today we all take for granted, just remember the law was written when this device was your communications device. And so I think when we start this conversation, it's real important to remember that technology has changed dramatically, yet the law hasn't changed at all. And so we've got a process today where if you have a disagreement with the law, you've got to go to the FCC, and maybe they rule your way one day, maybe they rule against you one day, but shouldn't we have this open discussion? Traditional distributors remain subject to archaic regulations while new entrants operate virtually free from the heavy hand of government, but are constantly threatened by the possible extension of these same obsolete rules. Since Congress created the problem decades ago, it has a responsibility to review and fix them today. The current unfair system forces people to turn to the FCC for relief and encourages new entrants to cherry-pick regulations that benefit their platforms. I also question the wisdom of regulating new startups and innovative services as traditional video providers. There are not recipes for encouraging the utmost innovation, investment, and ultimately competition benefiting consumers. Modernizing this decades-old regulatory framework should instead focus on providing relief to all stakeholders by repealing the intertwined 76 and 88 compulsory copyright licenses, as well as the 92 Cable Act. Sweeping away these government intrusions altogether will actually level the playing field for content creators and video distributors alike. Negotiations for broadcast content will then look much like it does for cable programming, where compensation is paid for the issuance of traditional copyright licenses. It's time we recognize the dramatic transformation that has occurred in the video marketplace by getting the government out of negotiations that should be strictly left up to the private sector. I think I know somebody in this subcommittee who's actually got legislation to do just that, and we'll Well, now I want to ask some of our panelists some questions about this. First, if we can just go across the board and a yes or no question. Do you believe the current video marketplace allows consumers sufficient choice over what, when, where, and how they watch video programming? Yes or no, starting with Mr. Johnson.
Well, regarding our service, I would say no, because of the
Ms.
lack of programming.
Thank you. Just yes or no across.
No.
Mr. Hyman?
Getting there, yes.
Mr. Funk?
I agree with Mr. Hyman.
Mr. Powell?
Make that 3, yes.
Mr. Barrett?
Yes.
Mr. Ergen?
No, not yet.
Mr. O'Leary?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so we've got clearly a split amongst the panelists here. Mr. Barrett, and appreciate the work that WDSU TV, the NBC affiliate in New Orleans, does. It's one of the Hearst affiliates. Do you currently have the legal rights to sub-license all broadcast programming transmitted over your signals to companies like Netflix and Sky Angel, and if so desired, who do not qualify for compulsory copyright licenses? Is it something that you have the legal rights?
Limited right from our networks with respect to how we may transmit their signal to other distributors.
So limited rights?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Ergen, are your company's opposed to paying for access to content?
No, we're not opposed to paying for no, we're not opposed to paying for content.
Mr. Johnson?
You say content, do you mean local programming or cable channel?
Any content that you
Well, no, we
distribute.
expect to, and have been paying for the content, yes.
Mr. Hyman?
All we do is pay for content.
Right. So this is something that that already occurs. I want to ask Mr. Barrett, y'all own a stake in A&E, the History Channel, Lifetime, other cable channels, correct?
That's correct.
Now, those negotiations, when you're negotiating with different video distributors, is that a free market? Do y'all just sit at a table? Are there any government-forced compulsory copyright laws or retransmission consent agreements that have to happen?
We negotiate on behalf of Hearst Television for the retransmission consent rights and are not involved in any link negotiations with Hearst-owned cable assets.
Okay. I want to ask you about some comments you made in your opening statement on page 9 and 10. You made specific reference to the legislation I filed, H.R. 3675. In it, you say, cable and satellite providers, you're referring to their content. You said, first, they would turn back the clock to a time when cable and satellite providers confiscated and resold broadcast signals to their subscribers without obtaining broadcasters' consent. I'd first suggest to you that my legislation does not do that. I would hope you've read the sections that not only repeal compulsory copyright, but also retransmission consent, which means we would revert to traditional copyright laws. And under the legislation that I filed that you referred to, a company would have to pay for the content that you would provide before they could distribute it. Yet you refer to my bill and you say that providers could confiscate the content under my bill, which is a mischaracterization. I wonder, did you read the bill and have you re-looked at this statement?
I've read the bill. If you say that this is a mischaracterization, I will revisit that.
All right. And just on a final question, Ms. Sohn, you look at this industry, how would you, you've read the bill too, does this legislation that I've filed allow for people to confiscate content and give it away, or would they actually have to pay for it?
No, of course not. I think the thing that keeps getting lost in this conversation is that Mr. Barrett and his colleagues get their transmission means spectrum for free from the public, okay? They get it for free from the public. In exchange, they're supposed to make that signal available for free from the public. So this notion that they're somehow entitled to money for their signal, number one, that's only been the case for the last 20 years, all right? So from the advent of television broadcasting in the 50s till 1992, you know, other people were quote-unquote confiscating their signals. But again, that signal is supposed to be free. I don't know how you confiscate something.
But under my bill, if somebody retransmits it, they would have to actually pay and get an agreement with one of Mr. Barrett's companies, pay to get the copyright license.
Right, and that makes more sense. It eliminates the middleman.
So I just ask if you could go back and look at the statement.
I will go back and look, but let me comment that I think the characterization that we get this for free is a mischaracterization. The public trustee model has been in place since the 1920s and the 1930s Communication Act, and acknowledges that the limited spectrum is a limited resource. It belongs to the public, and those most capable of serving the public interest should be entrusted with that license. And I think the body of record would show that local broadcasters in this country have served the public interest very well, and the notion of free is baloney.
Right. Well, that's referring to over the air. I was specifically asking about the bill that was filed and the copyright laws that would still be in effect if the bill were to file, that nobody could retransmit your signal without first getting an agreement and compensation to you. All right, appreciate it. Now, Mr. Dingell, the gentleman from Michigan, is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank you. I commend you for holding this hearing, and welcome to our witnesses. I have a lot of questions to ask and too little time, so I hope you'll help me by answering yes or no. This question to all witnesses. And I'm going to make a statement, and then I'm going to ask if there's anyone that disagrees. We can all agree that consumers want innovative, informative, and entertaining new content. Absent such content, new delivery methods won't matter much to consumers. Now, is there anyone that disagrees with the statement that content creators should be compensated fairly for their content, which itself should be protected? Is there anyone that disagrees with that statement? Very well. Now, speaking of content, there's some consternation, I understand, in this question to Mr. Ergen, about your latest invention's effect on content distribution. So I'd like to explore this issue perhaps a bit more carefully. Now, Mr. Ergen, is Dish Network currently being sued for copyright infringement and breach of contract in federal court over its new Hopper service? Yes or no?
Yes, we asked it. I'd characterize it a little bit differently. We filed a declaratory ruling in the state of New York based on. Just let me finish, please, because I want to make sure the record's clear. We filed a declaratory ruling because.
Mr. Chairman, may I have order, please? The next question, Mr. Ergen.
Gentleman, last questions for Michigan. Thank you.
Is it true that Hopper only automatically records and provides commercial skipping for programs on the local 4 network affiliation statements in the market? Yes or no?
No, it does not automatically record.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Ergen, is this so because the channels are in the most popular channels on your system? Yes or no?
It has to do with a variety of factors.
Is that yes or no?
Both technical. Well, it's not a yes or no answer on that one because
now, Mr. Ergen,
it relates to how our satellite works and how we can record.
I've got an election coming up, like all of my colleagues here on the committee, and like every politician everywhere. And we all use political ads on local stations to reach our constituents and those who vote in the districts. Mr. Hopper, the Hopper potentially limits the ability of every member of this subcommittee and every one of our challengers to reach constituents with ads to help them to make up their minds on election day. Do you understand and appreciate the concern that the politicians up here on the dais and other politicians everywhere would feel on this matter? Yes or no?
I understand the consumers very well. I'm not a politician, so I can't say that I understand your concerns on whether someone's commercial as well.
Now,
but I certainly understand consumers.
Now, given all of this, Mr. Ergen, I hope you understand my skepticism when it comes to Dish's latest offering and its effect on the future of video. Now, I'd like to use the rest of my time to learn a little bit more about how the cable industry is adapting to new federal communications regulations to provide its subscribers with new types of content and ways to view this. Now, Mr. Powell, is it true that the cable industry supported the Commission's open Internet order? Yes or no?
Ultimately, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Powell, again, if you please, help me remember. Was use-based billing considered and allowed by the open Internet order? Yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Powell, were managed services also considered and allowed as part of the order? Yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Powell, I want to thank you for the way you're proceeding here. So are cable companies delivering products and services as well as practicing business models that comply with the open internet order? Yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Powell, in other words, cable is complying with the order. Is
Yes,
that right?
we believe we are.
Now, Mr. Powell, one last question, and I do want to commend you again. The FCC just sunsetted its viewability order. I think it's very important that cable subscribers be able to access local content by smaller broadcasters. Now, this is the question. What steps will NCTA's member companies take to ensure that their subscribers can still access local broadcast signals affected by the viewability order's sunset?
Yes, we agree that it is important that they continue to receive those signals. 80% of the consumers have already gone digital and they will not be affected. As to the remaining 20%, we've committed to low-cost boxes that would make that an affordable transition, similar to the boxes broadcasters use for the HD TV transition. And we've committed to providing adequate notice and a transition period that allow that to happen smoothly.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. And Mr. Chairman, to you, my thanks. To the panel, thank you for your assistance and your candor. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Rush, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank the witnesses also for their appearance before the subcommittee. I have a question for the panel regarding the legal construction of the MVPD definition that I will submit for the record, or may get to ask if we do another round of questions. And if there is time remaining, Mr. Chairman, I also like to hear some of the panelists' views regarding the consumer privacy matters. Privacy needs to be addressed, as so many of your video business models depend heavily on advertising, and there are other emerging models not represented here today that are rolling out video offerings tied to social media platforms. But first, I'd like to ask for the record questions that pertain to the importance of more diverse ownership of broadcasting, wireless, cable, and information services licenses. Mr. Barrett, while I agree with you that we should limit the lack in diverse ownership and control of wireless services, I'd like to look more into something that's written into your testimony. It says that, and I quote, "The broadcast model permits a diversity of ownership and control that does not exist in wireless services," end of quote. Then you know, Mr. Barrett, for example, that minorities make up more than 1/3 of the U.S. population, yet only own an estimated 3% of full-power commercial television stations and a little more than 7.5% of commercial radio stations. And I strongly suspect that minority cable system ownership numbers are not much better or much lower. Do these numbers suggest to you that there is sufficient diversity of ownership and offerings of diverse media content? And should we be concerned that those levels could decrease even further following voluntary relocation of broadcasters during the lead up to incentive auctions?
I think those numbers suggest that there is a sad limitation of the number of minorities that are involved in ownership. I think my comments and my remarks were meant to suggest that there are 1,700 or so TV stations across the country. There is an opportunity for more diverse ownership than there may be in a world where the national licensees and national providers of this content is the reality that we live with. I think that the country is at risk in terms of less diversity, and I would note that minority groups are very dependent on broadcast reception. 28% of Asian households, 23% of African American households, 26% of Latino households are today receiving broadcast reception over the air.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, without objection, I'd like to enter into the record a copy of a letter that was just filed with the FCC a couple of days ago by a number of stakeholders asking the FCC to study the state of black radio ownership and programming diversity and to adopt rules that address these disparities. Even though the subject we're taking up today is video and not audio, these stated concerns and the state of minority ownership in the video marketplace is even more acute and troubling.
No
this
objection.
is a question that I have, without objection.
No objection.
All right. This is a question I have for both Mr. Barrett and Mr. Powell around the issue of tax certificates. In the past, Mr. Barrett, the association you're representing here today, the NAB, has strongly endorsed passage of legislation to establish a new communications tax certificate program. Is that still the NAB's position?
Yes, it is. The NAB would continue to support such a legislative initiative.
And Mr. Powell, the association that you're representing here today, the NCTA, also previously endorsed passage of legislation for new communications tax certificates program. Is that still the NCTA's position?
Yes, Mr. Rush. In 2003, when Senator McCain introduced tax certificate, as chairman of the FCC, I was an enormous proponent and remain so.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, without objection, I'd like to enter into the record the FCC's Section 257 report recommended that Congress reinstate a tax certificate policy. I would point out that the statement of former FCC Commissioner Michael J. Copps accompanying that order as being the source for the minority ownership percentages that I cited earlier. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields, and there's no objection to the gentleman's unanimous consent motion, so that will be entered. Now the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. Ms. Sohn, could you tell me what you believe the effect will be of the proposed deal between Verizon and Spectrum Company on the telecommunications marketplace?
So the Verizon Spectrum Co. deal will have several negative effects, both for competition and consumers. One is because there are these side agreements. Okay, there's a Spectrum sale and there's affiliated side agreements. Two of the side agreements, one is a marketing agreement, one is a reselling agreement, basically is an agreement between the cable companies and Verizon to lay down arms and no longer compete in the video or wireless marketplace. So Verizon and AT&T will get the wireless marketplace to themselves, and the cable industry will get the wireline industry to themselves. But even worse than that, there's something called the Joint Operating Entity, or the JOE. And that is essentially an agreement between those 5 cable companies and Verizon to develop patents and technologies that would help to stream a video from wireless to wireline systems. And that has an enormous capability to be anti-competitive and used against, for example, Mr. Ergen's company. If he wants to use that technology, he'd probably be charged, very, very high licensing fees, or he might be told, I'm sorry, you're not part of the club, you're not part of the cartel, you can't have this technology.
Now,
very dangerous.
is Mr. Ergen, are you afraid of that you might not be part of the club, as I guess what Ms. Sohn is saying is that there's going to be kind of cozy cooperation here that exists and you just might get walled out. Do you agree that that's a possibility?
Well, unfortunately, we have not seen the unredacted comments, so I can't say specifically what they say, but we would certainly have a concern where 2 vicious competitors might get together to A, not compete with each other, and B, exclude other people for competing with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's always been the beauty of the 1992 and 1996 Telecom Act, is that it created, the conditions for Darwinian paranoia-inducing competition, which, ultimately is the ultimately results in innovation and more benefits for consumers. And so you always have to be wary especially when people start talking about rewriting the 1992 and 96 Telecommunications Act, that somehow or other there's too much competition or too many players that are out there, and maybe some of the smaller players don't need protection. So let me go to you, Mr. Powell. You just heard the two comments made by Ms. Sohn and Mr. Ergen. How would you comment upon
I'll be limited in my comments because as the head of the association, I'm not really a party to the transaction and don't have the specifics that the companies would in terms of their conversation. I would say that all deals like this deserve vigilance, and that's why we have an antitrust process. And I think that we should rely on the confidence and the able skills of both the Federal Communications Commission and the Antitrust Division to rigorously scrutinize the transaction for those purposes and to reach a conclusion in the public interest. I don't believe that it's intuitively clear that it's a capitulation. There wouldn't be continued competition among these companies, but I think that's why we have an antitrust process, and I have a lot of faith in it.
Yeah, let me ask you, Mr. Barrett, and you, Mr. O'Leary. July 1st is the deadline for the completion of kind of the rulemaking and the implementation of the provisions which I built into a 2010 law for video accessibility. Could you give us an update as to where your two industries are in terms of complying with that?
Speaking on behalf of Hearst Television, we are well in hand. Our implementation will be fully complete, and I'm very pleased with how that has proceeded. And I think on behalf of the NAB member stations, the same thing can be said.
Mr. O'Leary.
Congressman Markey, I would say effectively the same thing in response to your question.
And what was that?
That we are working towards compliance, and also pleased with the way the process has gone.
Okay, but I mean, it is so important that the deaf and the blind do have access in the 21st century, that they are able to use all of their God-given abilities to fully participate. And so it really is, it's very, very important that we get the full cooperation, and we thank you for your positive comments about the process. I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Chairman yields back the balance of his time. I believe that's the last member of our subcommittee with time. So I want to thank all of the participants today. As you probably heard from some of our colleagues, they may have other questions that they'd submit for the record, that if you can be responsive in your answers, it will really help us in our work. Your presence today certainly does that. These are consequential issues we're discussing at a policy level, and your input is really helpful in our process. So I thank you for participating, and with that, the hearing is adjourned.